Now, Jimmy, and I realize I amended it, so I can't take full credit here, but I also said, I believe in that same rant, that the White Sox were going to win 5-2. So I was off by a run. But when you're talking about a team that's lost 21 straight games, and I even told you, if you don't mind me saying so, I even told you, you remember like a week ago, I said it'll go to 21, and then it's going to end at 21. They're going to go, and I remember I looked at the schedule, and I go, they're going to go to Oakland, and in the second game they play in Oakland is when they're going to end the streak. It's going to end at 21. Because remember, I for a split second, when you were doing your plays of the day.
Was that Monday, or was that this past Friday when that happened?
When I said that?
Yes.
Maybe it was Monday. Because remember, for a split second, I hit. Well, no, I did it twice, because last Friday I said it's going to go to 21.
Mm-hmm.
Then I think it was Monday when I said they're going to win in Oakland in game one. And then immediately I said, no, wait a minute. They're at 20 right now, so they're going to lose one more. It's going to be 21, and then they're going to snap it. So, and here's the thing. You can't see it on the – let me see if I can do this on the camera for the viewing audience.
That's impressive. Yeah, they got it. They got it in frame.
I'm wearing my Chicago White Sox socks, which are actually black. And I'm not even a White Sox fan. They're really comfortable socks.
Is that do you have any other obscure MLB
I do.
socks or
anytime I go to a Major
apparel?
League game, I buy the team apparel socks because they're super comfortable socks.
Sure.
So I have the Dodgers, I have the Angels, I have the Cubs, I have the Reds, and I have the White Sox.
Nice.
And then I have the Hamilton Tiger Cats. Anyway, yeah, I mean, I have other leagues as well.
Okay.
Good afternoon to you today is Hump Day Wednesday, correct?
It is indeed.
My name is Jake Query. Jimmy Cook is the other voice you just heard. Eddie Garrison here as well. It's Query & Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. And if you're just joining us, let's get right to the story of the day. It happened at the end of Colts practice earlier today in Grand Park in Westfield during 7-on-7 drills when Josh Downs, the second year and very versatile and dynamic potentially receiver for the Colts, was brought to the ground by safety Nick Cross. Now, Eddie, you correct me if I'm wrong, but it is my understanding is, according to Kevin Bowen, who was there amongst others, that Shane Steichen was not pleased with the full contact that Nick Cross delivered, which I guess is not necessarily typical in the 7-on-7 drills, but he did make a full tackle of Nick Cross, of which Nick Cross then was not able to put pressure or weight on his leg, and Josh Downs, and Josh Downs was helped off of the field. So Josh Downs injured. In no way, shape, or form am I implying, and I don't think anybody is, that this was malicious by Nick Cross, but either way, maybe it was more physical than typically is designed in that play. But yesterday we talked about how the Colts have avoided necessarily the injury bug, at least offensively to this point. We don't know the severity of this. We hope to get updates over the course of the day, but Josh Downs hurt today in what apparently was kind of an atypical hit, right?
Correct, yeah. It was 7-on-7. Like you said, there's typically no contact. Shane Steichen was not happy with that. Nick Cross did speak after practice about that situation, so as soon as I can get my hands on what he had to say, I will let you know. That way we can bring it to the listening audience.
This is the second time, and again, I want to be clear, I'm not out there at camp every day. Usually the practice times conflict with what we're doing here at the show or with show prep or whatever, and we're not able to make it out there, but thankfully we do have high-level correspondents out there, like the regular Colts guests that we have on this program, like our very own Kevin Bowen, who, as Jake mentioned, you can find on 1075thefan.com. So incredibly small sample size, admittedly, but I get it. Testosterone's running high, blood's pumping, you're finally out there in practice, in training camp, you're many days in now, and you want to make a statement, or maybe the energy of the moment gets the better of yourself. This is the second time that I have seen Josh Downs get absolutely decked in some capacity over the last week. On Monday, Jake, we had kind of referenced that, how there was some chirping going on between, I believe it was Zaire Franklin and it was Josh Downs, the intended target on a deep post route in the end zone. And there's a lot, like, Downs got decked. If there was an actual NFL referee out there, it's a pass interference call. It obviously doesn't wind up getting called.
No, there are referees out there.
Hold up, let me clarify. You're right, Eddie. I shouldn't be disrespectful.
There
are referees out there,
fully
but
paid.
they're not. They were
Correct.
not like it was pass interference.
Correct.
Like, it was as clear as day pass interference as you're going to see. They're not throwing flags every play. They're largely letting them play, and the officials are there, at least from what I've gathered, as a if by means necessary, they are there to corral things or keep things in check. But you're not you're not throwing the type of every down penalties that you might see in an NFL game. Anyway, my point is, very small sample size, Jay, but this is the second time that I have seen Josh Downs or heard about Josh Downs being involved in some type of collision with a defender. The first one that we referenced from when we were there at camp on Monday was just a bang, like very aggressive play. Downs got up, everything was fine, and now it's Nick Cross as the guilty party. So just very weird. I told you my bar. It's not a hard bar, and I get it. It's out of our hands. It's out of the players' hands to some extent, but just stay healthy. Get to week 1 with everybody healthy. That would be nice, especially when it's, friendly fire action. Like, don't let that happen. Can you not? Can you do your best to try to... Again, it wasn't malicious by Nick Cross. I'm not implying that, but just it's
stupid.
It's dumb. Yes, it's dumb. Like, I'd rather, if you hear a non-contact injury happen, okay, what are you going to do? You could argue that's fate. Life happens. It was going to happen eventually.
I mean, you could argue it's fate also in this situation.
Sure. I'm not blaming Cross.
The
I want to make that
curious
clear.
thing, to be honest with you, what have we been talking about for the last... Here's the reality. The reality is, and I know people don't want to hear this, and this is actually a good thing. What I'm about to say is a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. The reality is, it's been a pretty boring camp. Been pretty boring. Now, you're not rooting for injuries. That's not what I'm saying. But not a lot's happened. They've gone out. They do like every other day for, the NFLPA. There are a lot of things that come into play here. But from a storylines standpoint, it's been kind of boring.
I like that.
No meetings. Like I said, not a bad thing.
Sure.
No meetings in buses. No holdouts. No, this guy's not happy. This guy wants extension. No, is this guy healthy? No, this guy might retire. None of that. Been pretty boring. So when things get boring and things get kind of dull, you have to come up with things that you start talking about. And maybe that actually starts fueling and the stone is rolling down the hill and it starts accumulating more moss than initially it was supposed to. And all of a sudden you've got this big boulder coming down the hill and it's got a full head of steam. And what storyline, Jimmy, we talked about with Shane Steichen. We talked about it yesterday ad nauseum. We talked about it with Stephen Holder. The morning guys have talked about it. J&V's talked about it. Anywhere you turn, what's the one position that's been a storyline not named wide receiver for the Indianapolis Colts that appears to be the most wide open spot?
Safety.
The safety position.
Yep.
Who's a guy that the Colts moved up to take in the draft a few years ago that plays that position?
Nick Cross.
Who's a guy that they moved up to take because they liked his athleticism and his ability to make plays happen with his unique traits, but they were still waiting on him to learn football instinct?
I would say Nick Cross.
Okay. Now, when Nick Cross was drafted, what do I talk about all the time? Oftentimes, the expectation of a player, the branding of a player, isn't necessarily even what that player brings to the table coming out of college or what position they're walking into or what the resume says. Oftentimes, the expectation in the early going of a player's career is stamped and immediately cemented by where and how they were selected. If Nick Cross had been a 4th-round pick and they just said, yeah, we liked his athleticism. I mean, maybe it's a bit of a stretch. A lot of people had him going in round 6, but we liked it, so we went ahead and took him in 4. Okay, fine. But the fact that they traded to get him, the fact that his head coach at Maryland came on, for example, on the morning show with us when I was doing the mornings and said, yeah, I think the Colts surprised a lot of people here, but they are getting a very athletic and raw guy. So the Colts let it be known that they were taking a little bit, not an experiment, not a flyer, but a little bit of a stretch, okay? They knew that they paid $1.10 on the exchange rate. They could have paid $1 if they'd waited, but they paid $1.10. Okay, they paid an extra 10 cents. Fine. So they gave just a little extra to get him. So Nick Cross knows that. Nick Cross knows there's a spotlight on me. It was expected that I was going to partner with Julian Blackmon and we were going to be this dynamic. By now, I need to start showing it. He doesn't get up in the morning and say, today I'm going to knock somebody's head off. But Nick Cross is probably going at a little higher motor because he has a little more incentive within him to be able to solidify position and justify how he was selected more so than other players. Our boy Derek Slivka, right?
Yes.
The Wonder Flash.
Yes. Yep.
Out of Ithaca College, undrafted free agent, was a wide receiver at Ithaca and was taking summer classes and working at Aldi, and they called him up and they're like, hey, you want to come play out, try it? Say, sure. Okay, here we go. That guy, he knows that they took a flyer on him, right? But he knows there's no expectation for him. Those little things, that expectation, that pressure, that conversation, that narration makes you go that extra 1%. And in this case, instinctively, Nick Cross is a guy that we've been told forever is a raw athlete and a guy they took a flyer on, but they were waiting for the football instincts to come into play. What did Shane Steichen talk about when I asked him about Anthony Richardson and I asked him about instincts? And he said, a lot of that stuff's God-given. You either have it or you don't. I'm not saying Nick Cross does or doesn't. What I'm saying is, in this case, his competitive drive or whatever it was overtook and ruled out the natural instinct, because the instinct is we're in 7-on-7, I got to back up. And instead, the instinct of I've got to overcompensate took over, and he makes a mistake, and he hits him. I don't think it's malicious by any stretch.
I don't think it would either, but in year 3, to quote Shane Steichen, you got to be smart out there. Like,
I don't disagree with that.
Like it's maybe this winds up being just a bad bruise or a strain. Like, we don't know the full details of Josh Downs' injury yet, so it's hard to place where the frustration should be, other than if it's clear, regardless of the competitive nature, what the setting of 7-on-7 is asking you, and you are in the group of being a veteran on this team entering your 3rd season with the Colts. Even if you're trying to prove something, you've got to be smarter than that. Just got to be smarter than that. And who's to say that on a normal, if it just would have been the 2-minute drill at the end of a game and they're in full pads, that Josh Downs wouldn't get hurt in a similar play, right? I do not sit here saying Nick Cross was maliciously trying to injure anybody.
Right. I don't think anybody thinks that.
And I agree with you wholeheartedly, Jake. He probably is trying to prove himself, but as a veteran, and I am drawing a line there of by year 3, you are now a veteran in the league. You need to know there's a time and a place to prove it and a time and a place to be smart. And that was not a smart play today.
Yesterday at the very end, and I realize it's now been almost 24 hours, and in the news cycle that we are in, typically stories last like 6. But it was at the very end of our show that Cole Hocker of Cathedral High School in Indianapolis, a 2019, I believe, Indiana state champion, IHSA state champion, won the 1,500 meter in Paris. He was running 5th, basically coming out of 4. But it was interesting because we were watching it, Jimmy, as we're on the air, and I looked over, and you could see there were like 2 or 3 Americans there, and I, it's kind of far out, so you're going based on the color of the uniforms. And I'm like, I think Hocker is like in 7th, and then he was in 5th, and then he got boxed essentially about 200 meters out as he was trying to get towards the rail on the inside. He kind of got boxed out and had to withdraw a little bit, and then he just found an extra gear and found an opening, and you could tell right then it was over. And I saw a very cool video, I think most people have seen it by now, of the watch party at Cathedral High School.
So neat.
And you could tell in that, I mean, the video is shot from the back of the room, and so you can't see necessarily what's going on in the race, but you can tell by the reaction of the crowd when it hit them that he had won, because it wasn't until the last probably 50 meters that he had the lead, right? I mean, he literally came out of nowhere, and very cool. There was also a very cool photo of him when he won the 1,600 meter, I believe it was, in high school. So you're talking 100 meters further, but he's on the podium for the IHSA state finals, and it's like a 39 or 40-second difference. So you see how much time and I realize it's a shorter distance in the Olympics, but the time that he shaved off is impressive from just over the years. Not a lot of them since he was in high school, but the overall discipline that it would take you look now, he's only 23 years old. There's no reason to believe that Cole Hocker will not be able to come back to Los Angeles in 4 years, knock on wood, right, that everything's okay, and repeat, at least in terms of participation in the Olympics. But, Jimmy, if you think about I think all Olympic sports, the discipline is incredible. But think about the discipline of having to be a long-distance runner like that, between the diet, the regiment of the running that you have to do, all of it. I mean, pretty incredible stuff. But it was an awesome experience yesterday. Just to be able to watch that was pretty cool. And congratulations not only to Cole Hocker, obviously, but for those that knew him, that were thrilled for him. I've heard nothing but he is a super nice young man from a really nice family and just a great representation of Indianapolis.
It's been an incredible journey to watch from afar, dating back to his time at Cathedral, dating back to his time winning state titles with the Irish, to him going to Oregon, to him turning pro, him winning an NCAA title, 4 of them, in fact, while he was at Oregon. And then there's this conversation of can he just get a medal? Could he make the podium in this event in the Olympics? Could he be able to add a piece of that hardware to his trophy case? And you're right, Jake. There was a great race breakdown of it on NBC. They've done a tremendous job throughout with coverage, whether it's on Peacock or whether it's just on NBC terrestrial. But they've done a phenomenal job of breaking down events as they happen. And you mentioned the window for him where he's boxed out as they make the turn for home. And I believe I don't know who it was that had said this, but one of the broadcasters had mentioned that a lesser runner might have panicked there or might have gotten nervous and worried because the initial inside track he tries to take, the Norwegian runner has it boxed out. There's nowhere he can go. And he stays calm, he stays poised, and then his curve from Great Britain's on the outside. The Norwegian runner moves to the right, and that hole opens up, and it's daylight, and it's enough where he's able to surge forward just to the tail end and win gold. All the reaction videos were great. Very happy for his entire family, for the Cathedral community, the Indianapolis community as a whole. Very special to have an Olympic. I mean, Jake, we talked about it at the very beginning of the Olympic coverage. What's the one thing that you pointed out as to what the Olympic coverage does so well to bring the casual fan in?
Oh, it tells the backstory.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it magnifies times 10 when it's the backstory that you've been hearing from your local news outlets for the last couple of years, and then they make that top ascension and win gold. So special. By the way,
I don't want to alarm anybody here, and those that are listening on the radio can't, they wouldn't notice this anyway. Is somebody toasting something? Do you smell toast? Anybody else?
I don't.
No.
Eddie?
No.
You don't smell toast? I hear a fan over there going. Do we have like a computer that's running hot?
That's definitely happening if you hear the fan. If you hear the fan, the computer's definitely working it overtime.
Is it just me, or is there an oscillating fan? I feel like I'm in Mrs. Ritchie's 4th grade class here. Is there an oscillating fan running?
It's the computer fan, Jake.
Okay, so the computer's running a little hot.
It is. Yep.
Yes.
It smells a little toasty, what I'm getting at. You might want to check your drive, make sure that everything's still up there, Eddie. I don't want anything to overheat.
Well, it could be one of yours. It doesn't have to be mine necessarily.
Well, I don't have a computer.
What do you want right now?
I have no idea what that's attached to. There's no tower over here.
The tower's down here.
Okay, well then, but it's sitting by you. That makes it your computer.
No.
I got news for you. If that bad boy bursts into flames, that's hurting you, not me, right? It's sitting right next to you.
Buck stops with you, Eddie.
You know what I mean? Like you're on the emergency exit here, partner. I don't know if you know that or not. I don't know if they asked you already if you're willing to participate in helping us all out.
It's not just a simple empty yes, Eddie, and then moving on about your day for the extra
By the way,
leg space.
speaking of that, let me just say this. When you fly on a plane,
Me, specifically?
In general, I'm speaking generically to the audience. When you fly, I guess, you wouldn't fly on a bus. When you were on an airplane,
maybe the yacht bus.
In the old days, you would sit down if you had the emergency exit seating, and they come up to you and they say, are you capable and willing to? Yes, of course, I'm capable and willing to open the door up. And for me, it's like, no, believe me. Yes, I'm willing. Am I willing to open up this door if there's an issue? Yes, there is. Am I willing to help others? Well, that's questionable, right? But I can assure you that, yes, I'm going to be in a very large hurry to open this door. No problem there. But now they sell those seats because they have the extra leg room, right?
They do, but they still ask it, at least on the flights I go on.
But when you go up, because I've done this before, where I go up, and I used to do this in the old days.
Sure.
I'd go up and say, hey, just out of curiosity, is there an emergency exit seat available? Oh, sure. They'd look at me and they're like, well, you're 22 years old, you're 6'4", you look like you're in pretty good health. I'm sorry. Now it's I'm sorry, sir. Those have all been sold.
Sure. Okay.
So I'm like, let me get this straight. So instead of a 6'4", relatively healthy and nimble guy that is there to assist and facilitate if there's an emergency, you've got George Burns sitting there
Nice,
because
good pull.
because he bought the seat, right? That makes no sense to me. Wouldn't you want somebody who is willing to assist and capable of assisting, as opposed to, okay, great. Now I've got Thurston Howell III and Lovey sitting there in the seats. Good for them. Who are they helping? I digress.
George and Gracie are just trying to go on a nice little trip to Florida, Jake. That's all they're trying to do.
Exactly. But, hey, listen, those seats should be for the most capable and willing, not for the most financially willing. Okay, so Colts on the practice field. Joel A. Erickson is going to join us coming up at 2 o'clock today because that, again, incident on the practice field today. Josh Downs, we'll find out the latest on him. That is the second injury, but we don't know how significant. I mean, this could be that he twisted his ankle and he's out 2 days. We don't know the severity of this, but anytime a guy is helped off the field, and by the accounts of those that were there, it certainly looked like, by the description of it, something to keep an eye on. So we will find out the latest from him. David Woods, who I mentioned, is in Paris and has followed Cole Hocker throughout the course of his running career. I know David Woods was very interested in the Cole Hocker 1500 going into it, just because I think he was one guy, because he has followed Cole Hocker for so long, that saw that as maybe more of a possibility than did most people. Although he did call it, David Woods did at the time, perhaps the biggest upset in the history of the 1500 at the Olympics. He's going to join us coming up about 38 minutes from now. Speaking of the Colts and the preseason, I meant to bring this up yesterday, so I will bring it up today. This began a couple of years ago. I started doing this. I don't even know how it came about, but it has worked out very well, and I am very appreciative of those of you who already, including our buddy Paul the mailman, Paul the former mailman. He's a retired mailman, Paul Hurley, who is now one of the great photographers for IndyCar and the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. But Paul is the one that reminded me of this initiative that I've done. When it comes to the preseason, I understand that if you are a Colts season ticket holder, that means that there is an obligatory purchase of preseason games on your season ticket package. I understand that, and I understand the necessity of that. I also understand that for a lot of people, especially with the kids getting back into school and a lot of things going on, and because you are preparing yourself for a full slate of 17 regular season games, half of those being at home, that people who have season tickets for the Colts oftentimes roll their eyes and or are far less enthusiastic about using those tickets to go to a preseason game. There are two preseason games on the schedule this year that are at Lucas Oil Stadium. One is this Saturday. The other is it Saturday or Sunday this week?
Sunday this week.
Sorry.
Saturday next week.
So the second preseason game. So I'm talking about one of them. The second preseason game, which is, I believe, the 17th. It's against the Arizona Cardinals. It is Saturday night, 1 week from this Saturday. If you have season tickets and you have tickets to that preseason game that you have decided that you do not want to use and you're looking for someone to take them, now I'm talking about a donation, not purchase. I can get receipts if you so need it. But I started doing this a couple of years ago where if you forward me the tickets via email, and I will give my email address here in just a minute. If you forward me tickets via email, I have already spoken to an organization affiliated with the United Way that works with disadvantaged and at-risk youth throughout schools in Indianapolis public schools. I've talked to 2 different elementary schools, one on the near north side and one on the east side of Indianapolis, that they are very aware, both principals of both schools are very aware that when I send them, they are to select deserving students. And, yeah, students are just now starting to come back into school, but deserving students that would otherwise not get the opportunity to go to an NFL game. All of these students will be chaperoned by a trusted parent or someone either from the United Way or from the school itself to take kids to be able to go and enjoy the game at the tickets that are donated. If you send me the tickets, You simply need to forward me the email, and any season ticket holder knows how this works, the ticket forwarding process. But you forward me the email, and I will send them to one of those three places. One is via an organization via the United Way. The other two are elementary schools. If you need a receipt for tax deduction purposes, I can get that to you from the recipients of the tickets in the end. Easiest way to do it, you can text me and I will send you my radio address, but it's a little bit harder to remember just off of memory, I realize. But my email address here at the station, my email address here at Radio 1 and at The Fan is, I've got to look actually because it always throws me off. This email address is jake.query@radio-1.com. jake.query@radio-1.com. You can also always text me at 317-523-9288, and I will send you the email address if you can't remember. If you have my number in your phone, you can't remember the email address, 317-523-9288 is the cell phone number, or my personal email address, which is an easy way to remember because it's my two favorite people, jakequery@me.com. jakequery@me.com.
One of the all-time great email addresses.
Thank you.
You're
So
welcome.
if you have tickets that you are not using for a week from Saturday for the Pacers, or the Colts preseason game, you can send them to me and I will get them, and I promise you that they will be used by a young student that normally would not be able to go to a game, that's doing the right things in school, even though the school year is just getting underway, obviously. I would normally do both preseason games, but with school just getting back, we didn't have time to organize it for kids for this weekend's game. So this is just for preseason game number 2. And if you have made a donation already, and several have, it is very much appreciated, and I thank you so much for that. Also, if you are sending them to me, send a second email letting me know if you need a receipt. That's the important thing. Let me know if you need a receipt, and we will get that to you. When we come back, again, we talked about it. Josh Downs goes down. Pardon the pun. Not trying to be funny at all. What's the latest? We'll let you know what we're hearing about that. And David Woods joins us just over 30 minutes from now. It is Query & Company here on a Wednesday, 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
But
Oh man,
This is a bit rough, is it not?
someone on the nose.
Now, Eddie, was this intentional?
yes,
So a guy, I just want to make this straight, and I want to make
Come on,
very
man.
clear here that what we're doing, okay, and we're going to do. So we are coming out of a segment talking about how a player was helped off the field for the Colts with a leg injury where they could not put weight on the leg. And I talk about how we're going to get you the latest with Josh Downs, and Eddie decides to come back with "I'm Still Standing" by Elton John.
Yep.
And you're proud of that fact, right?
yeah.
Okay. So do you have inside information that, in fact, he's still standing?
Well, he posted on his social media Instagram story.
Okay.
It was I think it's a verse or something.
This is Josh Downs, by the way, Colts wide
Correct.
receiver that was injured today after being tackled in 7-on-7 by Nick Cross. Go ahead.
It says, "Faith and endurance, dear brothers and sisters, when troubles of any kind come your way, consider it an opportunity for great joy. For you know what? That when your faith is tested, your endurance has a chance to grow. So let it grow."
Yeah, I wouldn't say that
That's
that's
not a ringing
necessarily an
endorsement
overly
of back.
optimistic and ringing endorsement that he's bouncing back and still standing, right?
That'd be fine.
I would read that as, he's going to be very tested here. So I would read that. We continue to have faith and you'll persevere.
That's a little bit ominous, honestly. I look, you know what? I take that back. I'm not second half century of my life, right?
Sure.
One of the things that I think I should pledge to do since I'm over 50 is not try to interpret Instagram message meanings of those that are under 30, right? Kind of would make me creepy old guy. However, that said, because you ever notice these influencers? They're always posting pictures of like drinking their chai tea and like sitting on some beach in San Diego, and it's like, sometimes the winds whistle through your hair and it just means a new look for a new day. And everybody's like, "Love you, girl. So strong." And I'm
Queen.
like, no, it's a bunch of guys
Yeah.
like compliment her because
Yeah.
she's hot, right? I try not to. I don't want to go there. I don't want to be that guy. But this, when you read that quote,
I didn't just read "Let us rejoice and be glad." That's not the phrase that
that basically was
I took from that.
I would correct, or I would agree. That's correct. That to me reads more like, I'm not going to let this hold me down, and this will only make me stronger. Right? Isn't that usually the thing that's said?
Yep.
But to be fair,
We don't know anything yet.
and I would imagine that they don't either, because it is a little early. I mean, they probably have already done like an MRI or whatever, but it would be irresponsible of us to immediately conclude what any of that means. I've covered sports long enough to know, the story I always tell. I was just having this conversation the other day. You've heard me mention before, Jimmy. I've told you a billion times. Who was your first sports hero? I don't mean necessarily even like, I'm talking like it could have been like the neighbor kid that was able to hit 3-pointers in your driveway and you were mesmerized by it, or your brother Rich that was, could hit the wiffle ball over the fence. But who was like your first sports hero?
We'll give a shout out to current IU Indy coach Paul Casaro. He was one of the best athletes to ever go through Ron Colley. A lot of kids my age looked up to him a great deal. So yeah.
Eddie?
It's a good. I don't know.
Probably somebody at Decatur Central that played baseball before you, like when you were in elementary school or middle school.
Not really.
Did you leave the house much?
I did. Yes, I did.
Did you had VHF and UHF on the television, right?
What?
Okay.
We can
So-
double down. I'll give a shout out as well to Pat Kuntz. He's currently on the staff at IU, but he went to Notre Dame, played football for Ron Colley. A lot of.
I think that's a big one, right?
Yeah.
Is the high school star when
Sure.
you were like in elementary school of the school you knew you were going to go
Yeah.
to. So for me, in that vein, Lars Tate, who was, when I was in the 5th grade, was the #1 high school football recruit in the country at North Central and went to Georgia. And Lars Tate, I was just talking about this the other day with somebody. When he got to the NFL, after I think 2 years in the league, he went to Chicago and had a knee injury that basically ended his career, okay? And I was telling the story in recounting that about how when I was working in St. Louis and covered the Rams, I remember once after a game interviewing Marshall Faulk, and he had a huge ice pack on his knee. And I'm thinking, oh, man, like I've got the scoop here because nobody else is around and nobody knows. And I said, so do you have a knee injury? He goes, no. I'm just icing it down. And I said, well, did you play? What happened? Did you hurt your knee during the game? And he said, no, I just got to ice it down because I had a scope on Tuesday. This is a Sunday game. And I go, excuse me? He said, I had a microscopic surgery on Tuesday. They went in and cleaned up some stuff, some loose stuff in my knee on a Tuesday. And he's playing on Sunday, right? and yes, a scope is different than a knee tear. But my point being, Lars Tate's injury in 1986 probably would have him out 6 weeks in 2024. So, and that, my eyes were opened to that when I'm sitting there talking to Marshall Falk in 2000, nearly a quarter century ago. And he's talking about how 5 days after a scope, he played a full NFL game. Maybe that's the anomaly. But the point I'm trying to make, long-winded and circuitous here, Jimmy, is that we never know in an injury itself the severity of it or just how quick the comeback can be or how long. There are some injuries that you see and you think to yourself, oh my gosh, doomsday, the worst scenario. And then they say this was the 1 in 100 where there was no damage to the major ligaments and the player's going to be back in 4 weeks. And then there are other times where it just lingers and lingers and lingers.
Mm-hmm.
Neither of those do we have any way, shape, or form of knowing if it's applicable to Josh Downs. We might find out Josh Downs actually just had a leg cramp and couldn't get up. I mean, who knows, right? There's just no way to know that, although that post does make it seem a little bit more ominous than the typical, like, hey, not a bad hit, be back, whatever.
I would agree. There's a lot of truth to a tone of a post, but at the same time, you would have many hours lost sleep that you don't need to lose if you were spending all your time, Jake, trying to evaluate the social media posts of athletes. Just never know. It's all chess. It's all deeper meanings or just silliness.
That's a
it's hard to
quote, by the way.
For sure.
That
yes,
is not.
I figured. That's why I went with the
right.
Let us rejoice and be glad. Not the vibe I got there. But hey, who knows? We'll get more as it comes out.
So we'll see what happens with that. David Wood's going to join us, by the way. Did you, coming up top of the hour, did you watch much of the Olympics yesterday or last night? Tyrese Halliburton, 8 minutes, got himself a bucket, but a big win for the United States. And, now everybody talks about Germany. Jimmy, I'll be honest with you. I think France might be the bigger challenge here.
France looked good in that convincing win against Canada. I know it ended up getting tight late, but they were in control of that for most of the proceedings. They went with a smaller lineup. They have Wembanyama. They have Gobert. I mean, they have the ability to go small or utilize size. But I still think, and Jake, correct me if I'm wrong on this, maybe I'm being too close-minded, or maybe I'm being too arrogant American at this stage, but it feels like good old days is the wrong word, but it feels like what I'm used to with Team USA basketball, which is them taking care of their business and getting to gold in dominating fashion. I mean, maybe this doesn't wind up being the dominant journey as they get into now the semifinals, and you're looking at, a path for them that includes another matchup with Serbia, who, when we started the show yesterday, or when we got in here yesterday to start the show, it looked like Serbia might get knocked out, and they wind up coming back from one of the largest, if not the largest, comeback in Olympic history. It was up there. I can't remember the exact figure. 24 points. They wind up coming back and knocking off Australia in overtime, 95-90, and I don't know. I like the way Team USA matches up against Serbia. I don't think they're tested there. So now it's either Germany or France. And I'm with you. I would almost rather it be Germany, because I have seen the crowds at these games support Allez les Bleus, support the French. And it's been nuts. From fencing to swimming to whatever. Pick the event. They're out in mass.
Oh, of course.
And France is a really good team. I think I'd almost rather play Germany.
France has two things that are tough to – look, I know Anthony Davis and Joel Embiid are really good players, but they have two totally dynamic bigs, and they can shoot the ball from the outside. But if Wembanyama gets going, he's difficult to corral, and then Gobert, Fournier's played well. I mean, they've got good players, does France. And it only takes – when you have those two guys that can control down low like that, it only takes, one guy to get hot from the outside in order to kind of get things going.
That said, I still feel the utmost confidence that they win gold comfortably. Do you still feel that, or am I being the arrogant American that's not giving enough credit to France or Germany or Serbia?
Comfortably might be a bit much.
Double digits.
I think they would be favored, but I think basketball. I think we're at the point now where it's single elimination.
Sure,
right? I mean, the White Sox won last night, right? It's single elimination. You just never know. Back to the Nick Cross story. Stephen Holder now has his story up. Interesting. Kevin Bowen listed it as an apparent ankle injury. Stephen Holder says an unspecified injury to the leg for Josh Downs. But Shane Steichen said afterwards, quote, "We've got to be smart.
Mm-hmm.
We're competing like crazy, but we've got to stay off the ground, and we can't go down bottom line." This is what Shane Steichen had to say about the safety position and that battle when we asked him about it from Colts camp on Monday.
It's a good group. We're battling back there. Julian's done a hell of a job right there. Obviously, he's a staple for us back there right now. Nick Cross, Ronnie Harrison, Rodney Thomas, Trevor Denbo. We're rotating those guys right now, and we're going to find out, at the end of this camp, who's going to be the guy back there.
So that is still a position that's relatively open.
Yeah, those guys are competing, and we're going to keep finding out. I mean, we're going to week 3 of training camp right now, and we got some preseason games coming up, and those guys are just going to compete.
Now, afterwards, Nick Cross, who was the one that tackled Josh Downs in a 7-on-7, which is not the typical form of when contact would take place, had the following to say after the injury. This from Nick Cross. Quote, "We're competing, playing football. Josh is my guy. I love him to death." End quote. I'm telling you, I'm not trying to make a mountain out of a molehill here. I think it's a natural thing. I don't think it's an egregious thing at all. But of any position on the field, the one that it is most ingrained in the players partaking, that there is an ongoing, don't take your foot off the gas, no governor to it, competition at position, it's that one that Nick Cross is involved in. I'm not blaming him. I'm not blaming the staff by any way, in any way, shape, or form. I'm saying when you are going out there and you have it in your mind that you've got to go 110 miles an hour at all times, and yes, you love the fact that Zaire Franklin's going 110 miles an hour at all times, even though he's secured himself now as a long-form member in their rotation. You love the fact that Michael Pittman is going, and that's what you always heard about, Reggie Wayne takes no plays off, runs the same route every second. That's what you want, don't get me wrong. But when you get into a situation where you're like, okay, guys, now we're going to run some plays and run some drills, we're going to back off just a little bit here, or it's 7-on-7, so let's be aware of that. I think it's hard to flip that mental switch when you have been hearing. We know how open that position is. Shane Steichen's telling us how open that position is. He's telling listeners of the Fan how open that position is. He's telling anybody that will hear it. You show up and you go to Grand Park in Westfield and you stop at Quack Daddy Donuts and you get some donuts and you look up and it says, "Today's special coffee," and then underneath it says, "Safety position wide open." Everyone knows that position is a battle. So you know that Nick Cross knows it. And you know that means that in this case he erred. But he wasn't doing it maliciously, but rather because it is tough to turn off what you know in the bottom of your mind you have to, more than anybody else, keep on. That's the thing there.
Other side of the coin with that, though, and we can correct me on this on the other side, but a lot of football is mental. And I get it. You're right, Jake. It is a hard switch to turn off. But if a position battle is so wide open, everything should be held against you, including your ability to follow instruction, right? Like if you're asking them not to go take him down to the ground, or you're asking it to be a lesser pace in 7-on-7, I get it. It's difficult as an athlete to be able to do that. But that could also be the difference if you're deciding roster spot is how well do you follow, or not roster spot, but position on the depth chart. How well do you follow instruction? How well do you follow rules?
And that's the thing, is that instinct of knowing that is one of those things that we talked about that Shane Steichen was saying, some of those things you have or you don't instinctively. And I think with Nick Cross, uber athletic, good guy, football instinct, still something that they've been waiting to come around.
He's still just 23 years old, so he's still relatively young.
Right. And when they drafted him, that was the narrative. Instinct for all players. Sometimes if you don't have it, instinct just simply takes time. David Woods, by the way, in 12. Now, Eddie, a guy goes down running routes at the Colts game, and you come back with break my stride.
Ain't nobody going to break his stride. So
There you
really,
go.
it's a positive spin. He's got to keep on moving.
I'm only
Thank you,
hoping.
Jimmy.
I'm only hoping.
Thank you, Jimmy.
Bro.
I'm glad you take my side on something for once.
I mean, what are you going to start telling us? His middle name is Just Went. I mean, we don't even know. Honestly. Yesterday, by the way, Jimmy, before we get to David Woods, who's going to join us at the top of the hour, figured I would give you just mentioned Paul Corsaro. I had, and for me, it was truly a thrill. There are a group of coaches that coached in Washington Township during my time growing up that get together once a month and they're all retired now, right? So they just sit around and tell old war stories
That's
and everything
awesome.
else. Joe Porter, who was my freshman basketball coach. Randy Racine, who coached wrestling when I was in middle school and is a loyal listener to this program. Tim Stone, who was my middle school basketball and football coach. And when I played football, and Bruce Bowling, who was my basketball coach, actually was not able to be there. But Jack Gangstead, there were Dave Mock is the guy that invited me, which was great. Fred Mackey, Dick Pritchard. It was great to see all of those guys, and for them, we sat there and just told stories. But Tim Stone, when I was in the 8th grade, we were undefeated in Eastwood in football, and he was the coach, so he would write the morning announcements. And when I showed up, I hadn't seen him really since I was in middle school, and he said, I still tell people to this day that you were the first student to do the morning announcements at Eastwood because you came to me and said that you wanted to be a broadcaster, not a football player. And so we let you do the announcements. And he said, and it's fun for me to tell people that, and I said, yeah, you gave me my first broadcast job, really. Well, I had with me, this is a little weird, I realize, I had with me the script of the morning announcements from when I was in 8th grade.
Really?
Because I have it in a scrapbook that I kept from when I was a kid, and I knew exactly where it was because after the Great Purge, everything's easy to find. So I had it, and I mean, he was like, and I had 2 of the different announcements with all the players' names and the rosters, and it was truly neat to see that he enjoyed it. But for me, a real thrill that those guys even remember who I am, which was very cool, right? Because I was a subpar athlete and certainly a subpar student. But for you, Jimmy, I'm curious, give me a teacher at Roncalli or along the way that was a difference maker for you.
I mean, it would have to be my mentor, Rob Brown. He was the leading voice of the Roncalli Media Network throughout my entire time as a student. He taught me everything I know about play-by-play broadcasting. He's the reason that I tried to get into the business, that I got into the business. I wouldn't be here today without his mentorship, without his help. And like you've mentioned, in relationship that you've had dating back to the high school years, he's someone I consider a close friend to this day. And Rob's one of my most impactful people during my high school years.
Eddie, for yourself?
That would be the head football coach at Decatur Central now, Kyle Enright. He was my homeroom teacher, so we were very familiar with one another because he was a sports guy. He was the offensive coordinator with the Hawks when I was there, and then I think my senior year is when he became the head coach because Justin Dixon took the athletic director job, and we were going over, my college pursuit and what I wanted to do, and I was like, I have no idea. He goes, well, you know too much about sports to not do anything with it. Why don't you go into like sports media or something? So, boom.
So we blame him,
Sure.
right?
Yeah, you can blame him all you want.
I'm saying collectively, all 3 of us, right? Because it ain't like we're neurosurgeons. You know what I mean?
That's right.
We're just toiling away. Speaking of high schools that made a difference in the lives of young people, that certainly was the case for Cole Hocker because those that coached him, I think, were in Paris. Those from Cathedral were celebrating. It was very cool. And those that covered him, including David Woods, have followed him all the way through the Olympic journey. And David is still in Paris where Cole Hocker took the gold yesterday in one of the great finishes in the 1500 that you will see in the Olympics. And we're going to go across the pond and talk with David next. For the world, indeed. The Cathedral graduate. His story has been chronicled really from the beginning by David Woods, the independent journalist, formerly of the Indianapolis Star, that is in Paris. We'll get to David in just a second. Before we do that, real quick, because it's only happened in the last couple of minutes, breaking news here. Jimmy, we'll let you do the honors.
This from Jeremy Fowler of ESPN. Colts wide receiver Josh Downs suffered a high ankle sprain during practice today. Per source, the outlook right now is that Downs could miss about a month, but the Colts are sorting that out. A key piece to the Colts offense goes down. That at Jay Fowler, ESPN.
Only problem with that is high ankle sprains can be really, really nagging.
Yes.
They can, and they oftentimes, I'm not a doctor, I want to be sure and clear of that, but just in covering sports, a lot of times they can lead to other injuries because of compensation of the way that one walks, does different things on it.
Want to add another injury? Former Purdue Boilermaker wide receiver Rondale Moore went down earlier today in Falcons practice, had to be removed on an air cast on his, I think it was one of his legs, and the Atlanta Falcons ended practice once Rondale Moore went down. So not a good look there either.
Yesterday in Paris, David Woods is there as Cole Hocker, who he has covered since Cole was a young high school runner, took a shocking gold medal. I'm going to play this to begin before we bring on David, because David might enjoy hearing it in, even though it's his own recording. David Woods, who has been kind enough to give us his time on this program, is in Paris and did his narration play-by-play. This is pretty good play-by-play of the run as it happened with Cole Hocker taking gold.
Cole Hocker has put himself in this thing. He's on the rail, but he's kind of boxed in. I think he's being boxed. There goes Kerr. There goes Kerr. Now, is Hocker going to get through on the inside? Hocker's going to get through on the inside. Hocker's going to get through on the inside. Hocker's going to get through on the side. It's going to be Cole Hocker. Cole Hocker is the Olympic champion and an Olympic record. Cole Hocker is the Olympic champion. Oh, my.
David Woods joins us now, who had that call yesterday, and he is on the Express Pro Tire and Auto Guest line. David, I appreciate not only your time, but your patience there. And, you know, for you, I know, David, that, and I want to give our listeners a glimpse here, it is the job of any journalist to never have emotional or, you know, direct rooting interest in a story, but there also comes with it, you're kind of an ambassador for the athlete that you're covering in an Olympic situation for sure, because that's the one that people that are your readers are wanting to know what happens. For you personally, even though I know that, like I said, you can't have that rooting interest, but yet I got the impression that this is a young man, because you've seen the dedication from day one for him, that you did feel a pride to an extent, but a joy for him in that. Can you take me through just the overall experience of seeing the evolution of a runner like that?
Well, I think journalists, like to root for the story is the way I've always heard it explained. And, it's not a great story for us if, Cole Hocker makes the Olympics and then finishes 9th place or something like that. But you can't help but develop some kind of I guess, emotional investment in some of these athletes that you cover a long time, and then it would seem kind of disingenuous to hope they do poorly. But I as I actually wrote and just sent into the Star a little bit ago, there was a time a little over 3 years ago when it just occurred to me that Cole Hocker might become the most important sports figure I ever cover. But I thought, well, yeah, that's a stretch. He'd probably have to win an Olympic gold medal, and the chances of that aren't great. But at the time, he was a rising runner, a 20-year-old, and we're talking about the 1,500 meters too. This isn't, this is one of the premier events in track and field, and I still think track and field is the centerpiece of the Olympic Games, certainly on a worldwide basis. If not in America. So I just thought, there's a chance this could really be he could become a really huge figure. And after, I remember seeing him, run in a cross country semi-state, over at Shelbyville, the Blue River cross country course. I remember him 5 years ago fighting off not one but two different Lowell high school runners to win a state 800-meter title after he'd already won the 1,600. So it's just, to go from that relatively modest stage to this is really a pretty staggering ascension.
David, you have been around elite level athletes for a long time in your writing career. So you've seen, runners or athletes, track athletes, basketball players, whatever it might be, make that rise before. Which would you say was the case? For the people, or for yourself, for example, could you see Olympic level aspiration or competitiveness in Cole Hocker before or after you think Cole Hocker was aware of that? Like, did the people around him see it before he did?
Well, I think the people around him thought he would. I remember interviewing his Jim Knoll, who was his high school coach at Cathedral at the time, and we were wondering if he could, run a sub 4-minute mile while in high school. His mileage was pretty modest for a high school athlete, to run the times he was running. But Coach Knoll did that intentionally, kind of looking out for his, long-term benefit. And boy, it has paid off magnificently for Team USA and for Cole Hocker. But I remember that, of course, he won he's actually, this is kind of a fairly esoteric note, but he's the first Foot Locker high school cross-country champion ever to win an Olympic gold medal. But really, the time I remember, and I didn't see the meet, the city meet and the county meet were going on at the same time back in 2019, and another reporter went to the city meet, and I saw that Cole Hocker ran 800 meters in 150. And I thought, oh, man, that's, a solo effort like that with no competition. I mean, that shows a lot of legit speed, legit talent. You can't just train to run that fast. You have to have some genetics to do that. And so that kind of clued me in. And as it turns out, that the University of Oregon coach who recruited him kind of noticed that too. He saw Cole at a high school nationals run a anchor mile and distance medley relay that was awfully fast too. So it was kind of apparent even coming out of high school that Cole was going to do better. He became the youngest Hoosier ever to run a sub 4-minute mile, but he amazingly he really benefited so much during the pandemic. I mean, here he was like in June 2019, 408 high school miler, and in February 2008 he runs a 350 indoor mile. And he was actually at the time that, the youngest man in history to run a sub 351 indoor mile. So to me, that was a huge breakthrough. Now, as you go faster than that, of course, it's harder to drop the seconds. Although his 1500 time yesterday is equivalent to about a 344 mile, and I think he will make a run at 1500 or mile world records, if not this year, then in 2025.
David Woods is our guest out there at the Olympics, covering all things, both as a correspondent for the Indy Star, and again, a longtime sports journalist in his own right, covering track and field, high school sports, and of course, Butler Bulldogs basketball. David, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but you had a piece in the Star 2 years ago where Cole had gotten injured at the U.S. National Track and Field Championships that had been June of 2022, and that prevented him from being able to qualify for the 1,500 meter in the World Outdoor Championships that year. Is that right? Do I have that right?
Yeah. That was really a tough episode for him because here he was. He literally was living like about 2 blocks from Hayward Field where the World Championships are going on. But he developed an injury and couldn't run hardly for a few weeks and tried to make the team and then didn't. And of course, what would have been better for an Oregon runner to run a World Championships on your home Hayward Field in Oregon. But there were better things in store for him, and track and field is no different from any other sport. There are a lot of ups and downs, and I think if you'd have told him then, Cole, you're not going to be able to run here, but you're going to win a gold medal in 2 years, I think he would have signed up for it.
No doubt. And that's the reason I bring that up is I remember that story and, having known of and followed Cole through your work, through his dominance in the high school ranks, to hearing about that, to now getting to this point, the type of perseverance that it takes to not have that be a negative turning point. I don't even mean to win gold. I mean, that's in a whole other stratosphere, but to be able to continue to be a competitor and to continue to strive towards excellence, having come off of personal best for him and being a part of the Tokyo Games the year before that, to now being in a position to go win gold and be in a position to strike and win gold. At what point throughout your covering of Cole did you realize that level of focus and perseverance that, not all athletes have in them was within him.
Well, I think that one really total. He only had one college outdoor season at Oregon in 2021, and really that was the span of months when I thought he'd make it. He was the youngest American to make the 1500 meter team in the Olympics since a 19-year-old Marty LaCour in 1968. And he made the final. This will be a trivia question. Cole Hocker has actually run under the Olympic record in 2 straight Olympics. He ran under the Olympic record in 2021 in finishing 6th because the first 6 men were all under the Olympic record. And at this one, Jakob Ingebrigtsen actually was under his own Olympic record and finished 4th.
David, can you speak to David Woods is our guest. He's on the Express Pro Tire and Auto guest line. I'm curious of this. We'll take Cole Hocker as an example. He's a young man, obviously 23, but you've covered a lot of athletes that have gone through multiple Olympic cycles. Do they get time off? And by that I mean, I think that the narrative in my mind, and I can't be alone in this, is I think, okay, so if you're an Olympian and you're going to be in Los Angeles, that means that you're getting up and you are running 10 miles a day, 5 days a week for the next 4 years, and you're eating nothing but chicken salads and drinking water and Gatorade, and there's no off time at all. You can't let your body fall out of rhythm, if you will. What is the kind of the calendar, if you will, or just the training regimen? Because how do you avoid burnout? How do these athletes avoid burnout? How did he avoid burnout?
Well, I think he was really hungry for this season, Jay, because he really did kind of lose most of his 2022 summer. He came back and ran a couple of decent races in late August, early September, which I think just kind of restores your confidence a little bit. And but to consider, in last year's Diamond League final, which was the Prefontaine Classic at Eugene, he finished 4 seconds behind Jakob Ingebrigtsen and Yard Naguse in a mile race. I mean, 4 seconds is a lot. I mean, if you're 4 seconds behind. If you were 4 seconds behind yesterday, behind Hocker yesterday, I think you would have been about 11th or something. So that was pretty. It'd be pretty humbling if you had the aspirations he did and then finished that far back. But customarily these guys go ahead and race into September, and then they take maybe a month or so off, and then they kind of back for a slow build. He chose, and I think it's been shown that it's not disadvantageous. He chose to run in March's World Indoor Championships at Glasgow, Scotland, which I went to, and I thought he was going to win the gold medal there, but was outkicked right at the very end by a guy named Jordy Beamish, who was a New Zealand runner for Northern Arizona. But again, I think he would have traded. I think he would have traded that silver medal there for a gold in Paris, and it was just all part of the build-up. And actually, quite a few of the medalists from the World Indoor Championships are performing and medaling here. So I think maybe that's a crackpot theory that says you can't run well in March and then regroup and then run well again in August.
David, I know this is kind of a weird question because you had a call of it because you had obviously filmed it and we'd seen it on the IndyStar website, but it sounded like that, once they make that turn for home, you felt like he had a real chance to go and win this thing. And from an audience standpoint, just watching the NBC feed or watching wherever, even they really don't know he's going to actually be able to pull this off until the final, 10, 15, 20 meters or so. Was it at the top of the stretch where you felt like he could go and win gold?
It really was, and I've seen him run a lot, and having seen a little bit of the replay, who knows what's going on in all these races is Kara Goucher.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
She's an NBC analyst, and she's just better than everybody else. I mean, she is very good. She knows what's going on. She can predict these things. She knows how these runners are. And
she was the one that mentioned, I quoted this earlier in the show, David, that he was trying to go inside and he got boxed in, and she basically mentioned a lesser runner might have panicked and gotten worried there, but he stayed true and believed that hole was going to open up again, and then, the rest is history.
Yeah, that's what his agent told me today. I mean, the most impressive thing really was that not only was he, he had lost his momentum, but then restarted again. And if you're going maybe at a lower level of speed, it might not be that difficult, but the pace was so fast. I mean, you don't have that much zip left in you, going at that pace. I mean, they were within, just a little over second and a half over world record pace. And I think actually Ingebrigtsen went out too fast. But I think his own hubris might have caught him. I think he thought he could front run to victory that way, and maybe it's the only way he could have won. But Neguse is a good kicker, and Kerr is a good kicker, but nobody can kick like Cole Hocker. I call him the Barry Sanders of the mile because he can go from here to there faster than anybody else.
Hey, David, for you, David Woods is our guest. He's on the Express Pro Tire and Auto guest line. He has been covering the Olympics flawlessly and in depth for the Indianapolis Star, amongst other places, I assume, David. But I'm curious of this. Like, we'll take Cole Hocker. And yesterday we talked to Rajiv Ram, for example, and Rowdy Gaines about this thing. But the closing ceremonies of the Olympics, so much is made of the opening ceremonies, and every athlete is a part of the opening ceremonies. It truly is a special and magical thing. For the closing ceremonies, does that also involve and incorporate athletes, or are most of them gone by the time the closing ceremonies take place?
Some are gone. It's a lot more informal. I mean, a lot of athletes really love the closing ceremonies because you're not confined to your own nation and our own sport, and the athletes mingle with each other. And it's been interesting to see here. Some of the athletes really insisted on staying in the village. Others stayed elsewhere. I'm pretty sure Cole just stayed in the village. But that comes at its own risk because you have this many young people with this much energy. Mischief can ensue as well as noise and everything else.
Very informal. That's right. Yep.
Yeah, it's so you kind of have to I guess monitor yourself, but and a lot of the athletes, if they could, went to opening ceremony. So I know of several athletes who went to opening ceremony, and then, for instance, two of the women yesterday in the 1500. One went to a training base in St. Moritz, Switzerland. The other one went to Belgium, and for like a week, and then they came back.
Now, I know that my understanding is a lot of the informal in the closing ceremonies, Jimmy. A lot of the athletes want to informally engage and interact with the women's Spanish beach volleyball team, just for example.
Yeah.
Make sure that
Boing.
everything's going okay. Thank you, Eddie. David, with that, your responsibilities now in terms of things left to cover for you, and do you get a chance to get out now and, really kind of explore and take in and take advantage of the fact that you're in one of the great cities in the world?
No, I'm pretty much all Olympics all the time. I'm under here with a dice stack credential, which is the track and field website that I write for. So I'm at the stadium. I'm just watching the hurdles heats here on the screen in the media center. So I'm here the next few nights. I might go to something else on Sunday. Maybe volleyball. Maybe Mary Tyson Lappin of Bloomington, Indiana, has a chance at a weightlifting medal on Sunday. So I might go over to that. But I, track and field is my passion in this, and I'm here on that credential, so I feel obligated to do that. But there's not too much track involvement involving Indiana connected athletes remaining, although Devin Charlton of the Bahamas, a Purdue graduate, is a medal contender in the women's 100-meter hurdles.
What's the weather been, by the way? I mean, I assume it's pretty similar to here, but is it as hot? Has it been as hot and humid as it's been here? Because I'm curious about that from the athlete standpoint.
In the evening, it's mostly hovered around 80. It's been a little bit humid, but I don't think it's been that uncomfortable. And there's like a big difference between 80 and 95. In races longer than the 1500, it does take a little bit of a toll, but the 10,000 meters was an Olympic record, and I think all the runners were surprised the pace was going that fast. Grant Fisher won a kind of an improbable bronze medal in that, and the Americans in track and field, sometimes in events that you don't expect them to do that well in, are really performing well here, racking up the medals. The countries only get 3 per event. U.S. is advancing all 3 to finals in a bunch of events. I mean, you'd really have to say Team USA here at the track at the Stade de France has really performed well.
So you are how far? The stadium itself is how far from central Paris?
It's not it's really not too close. It's more on the northern edge of the city. Yeah, all the venues are so spread out. I don't know. It's really, there's not really a main Olympic park here at this Olympics, which was really awkward early in the Olympics till I figured out all the transportation stuff. But not too much to figure out now. I'm coming to the same place every day, and did not come to morning track today because I was up till 5 a.m. and decided I needed to sleep 4 hours.
You stayed at the Howard Johnson's there in Paris, is that right?
No, it's actually, I don't know what the connection is. It's actually called an F1. So I don't know if it has any relationship to the. I don't think it has any relationship to the auto series, but maybe it does. I don't know.
It was built during a tornado. David is actually where they got the name, right?
I don't know.
Would you overall, David, compared to previous Olympics, how would you rate the facilities and the venues themselves? The crowds have looked great, and the pictures always look great, but in person, how are they?
The venues are really good. The stadium is pretty, but what really is making it is the ambiance for the athletes. I mean, this is like Lucas Oil Stadium, Butler Duke Final Four every session, morning and night. I mean, it's just nuts. I mean, I was there the other, I think it was yesterday morning for heats of the women's 1,500 meters, 10 a.m. And the place is packed. As soon as the gun went off, it was deafening. I mean, just the environment has got to be really, especially for the athletes who were at the Tokyo Olympics, which was held in relative solitude.
Really, I didn't realize that actually.
Because of the
that was the COVID Olympics. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, David, we appreciate the time and great job covering that, and certainly showing the excitement of everything that went into what was a great upset, but a tremendous victory not only for the United States but for Indianapolis as well with Cole Hocker. And appreciate the time in stepping out to be able to talk with us, figuring out the time differences and et cetera. It's been greatly appreciated over the course of your time there in Paris.
Well, thanks for having me on. I can't say I was prophetic, but I was prepared because I wrote a story ahead of time as if Cole Hocker would win a gold medal, 21-1 long shot, be darned.
I love it, man.
And it turns out my preparation was warranted.
21-1 long shot on the day that the 21 loss streak ends for the Chicago White Sox. See, we tie it all in, Jimmy, on this program. David, I appreciate it. Safe travels back when you come back, all right?
Okay. Thanks, Jake and Jimmy. I appreciate it.
All right, David Woods joining us on the Express Pro Tire and Auto Guest Line. See, prophetic is what this – now, more often than not, 360 days a year, this show, pathetic. But every once in a while, prophetic, right?
Is it educate, entertain, and prophesize? Is that the new line?
Entertain and educate.
You know what we do now?
What's that?
We also help people make money because my understanding is several people yesterday, based on my tip about the White Sox, cashing in, baby.
Indeed. Plus 180 juice there for the Sox outright. So, well done.
But again, I go back to.
You were really bothered by the final score prediction odds. You were not happy
That's
with
ridiculous. Do you know how hard that is to do?
Yes.
So I predicted two final scores, and I will admit I hedged it. I said, off the top of my head, just came to me, and I said it's going to be 5-2. The White Sox are going to win 5-2. And then very shortly after I said that, I said, you know what? Actually, I think 3-2. 5 might be a little much. 3-2. So I'll admit I backed off that a little bit.
But with the odds, you could have sprinkled $5 on both, and
it was
made
3-1, like in the seventh inning, and I thought, oh my gosh, if the A's score one run, it's 3-2. Then they jumped up and went up 5-1, and I thought, okay, if the A's score a run and it's 5-2, then I looked. I mean, my genius radiates and permeates pretty organically. But if that would have happened, then it would have absolutely just cemented it, right?
I mean, I said it would have been a cherry on top, but, maybe two cherries, Jake. Maybe that's as far as we're going.
I'd have been able to tell you the country of origin and the exact species
etymology
of tree producing the cherry.
Yep.
I'm telling you. But nonetheless, the White Sox yesterday, thank you to those. Somebody even sent a thing to Andy and Kevin this morning saying, look, you got to give Query props. Because he said 21. He was adamant. Streak ends at 21. I was most impressed in that case, not that somebody recognized my brilliance, kind of easy to do, but that they were listening this morning and also listen in the afternoon, which is greatly appreciated, right?
Yes. Anytime
So it is
you're
that
doubling down with the fan, tripling down with the fan. In fact, we appreciate it.
I did get this. I found this interesting earlier when I was talking about yesterday eating with the coaches.
Yeah.
This from AT on X or Twitter, whatever. Hey, Jake, if you were any good at any of these sports, maybe you could have gone to Cathedral. You're a hater.
What?
Okay?
That's right, Jake. You're a hater.
I believe that was during like a 10-minute thing of me praising Cathedral's viewing party for Cole Hocker and,
Wait, you did that?
In addition to that, I think it worked out okay for me, right?
You did that?
I'd say
did.
so. I'd say it did. Yes. I missed the part where we were hating on Cathedral.
I'm like, hey, man, I don't know what to tell you.
I thought you were hating. Sorry, I didn't know you did that.
No, I was not.
If anybody, and I dropped these type of, I apologize, to my South Side roots, but it's a high school thing. Like once I left Roncalli, I mean, if anybody, somebody that should be frustrated with Cathedral would be me with the rivalry between those two schools. But I'm thrilled for Cole. Are you kidding me?
You're not
That's
19
awesome.
anymore,
Exactly
right?
Yeah. So I was thrilled for Cole, man. And
That's cool.
Especially with, and that's why it was so good that we could have David on today. He's tracked it from the very beginning, and I mean, you could hear it in his call, like the emotion of being able to see
Cole
that
Hocker
journey
go to
be
Heritage
completed.
The also, I believe, as a younger person?
Uncertain on that. I only know the Cathedral
I think
tie.
that's right. Like in middle school age, maybe?
Very well could be. I do not know. But yeah,
it was cool.
Everybody's getting ready for back to school times, and to get to have a live viewing party on campus like that. Shout out to the Irish. It's very neat for them.
He looks older than 23, doesn't he?
Yes.
Is it the hair?
I think it is the hair. Like he looks like if he wasn't a runner, he'd be playing, like strumming a guitar at a Starbucks, right?
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah. That's a good one.
He looks very Oregon.
Yes.
He looks more Oregon than Cathedral.
He looks Seattle.
Same thing, right? I mean, same region.
Yep.
Eddie, do you feel
what are you
solidarity with
implying
Cole
there,
Hocker?
Well, you mentioned
Have you
Starbucks.
noticed-
You mentioned Starbucks, and that's where
Okay, that's fair.
Starbucks was founded.
That's fair. I think of Portland and Seattle. By the way, Portland is to Seattle as Indianapolis is to Chicago. Like Portland is Seattle's like little brother kind of, and Indianapolis is kind of Chicago's little brother. As much as I hate to admit that, but because people in Chicago will remind you all the time, oh, the city, everything in the city is the best you could ever get. Yeah, okay, great. But you get what I'm saying. 3 hours away, the regional hub, et cetera, et cetera.
Sure.
Jake, we've got tickets.
We do have tickets to give away, right?
Yes. Do you want to leave them guessing?
Are we gonna do it on the other side?
I
We'll do a
believe so.
little. Should we do a little trivia on the other side?
Yeah.
All right, 239-1070 is the telephone number to give away for the giveaway. We have tickets to give away for Kevin Hart. Kevin Hart is going to be in concert November 17th at the Old National Center.
I think Eddie was hoping for.
I understand what Eddie was doing, but at the same time, I think it's probably important to let people know what it is that they're calling in for.
You're right.
So Kevin Hart tickets to give away on the other side at 239-1070, but the part to leave them hanging will be we will do trivia for it on the other side. 239-1070, Eddie will pick a number, and we will let you pick whether you do show trivia or just general trivia on the other side to go see Kevin Hart on November 17th at the Old National Center. So we have tickets to give away for Kevin Hart, November 17th, Old National Center. Yes, I realize I ruined Eddie's tease there. My apologies, Eddie, on that. But we are going to do trivia. Is that right?
Yeah, we can do trivia. We actually have 2 pair to give away because I forgot this started yesterday.
I always wondered this. Is it 2 pairs or 2 pair?
I thought it was toupee.
That also, right? Fortunately, I've managed to avoid that. Although, does it look like I'm thinning up here?
I think you look all right.
Do you want the truth or do you want
Yeah, tell me the truth.
Just a little.
I've had the headsets on, so that probably doesn't help.
just a little?
I always ask when I get a haircut, I always say, if my hair looks like the age of what person? And then they tell me, and it used to be a big gap, and now it's getting closer to my actual legitimate age. But I think at this point, I'm probably out of the woods, right?
I think so.
I realize that J&V's group and Kevin's group can take care of me if need be. Darren and the boys over at We Grow Hair Indy. Okay, 1 through 5 callers. You're going with which one, Eddie?
I think this is a first-time caller of the show. We'll go with Tomas.
Tomas joins the program. How are you, Tomas?
I am doing great. How are you guys doing?
You sound like a nice guy, Tomas. You sound like a nice fella. How old are you? We're doing well. Thank you for asking.
I'm actually 37 years old.
37-year-old Tomas. Okay, and are you a native to Indianapolis, Tomas?
Yep, born and raised.
Now, is there no H in your name? Is this Thomas without the H? Is that right?
Yes,
Okay.
Thomas without the H, Tomas.
And you are, I only ask this, and I don't mean it condescendingly, but obviously Thomas is the more common. Is this like a derivative of like a French heritage, or why Tomas and not Thomas, which I like?
Actually, my mother, we're full-blooded Hispanic. My mom's from Mexico, and my dad is from Texas. So I think that Tomas is more.
I guess Thomas
Hispanic
would be
sounding.
French, so my apologies there, yeah.
Wouldn't it be something if you said Tomas Schechter?
I know, or Tomashenga, yeah. So I guess it does kind of go in variation there. Okay, so Tomas, you said that your mother is from Mexico and your father where?
Is from Texas.
Okay, and so how did they end up in Indianapolis?
Both my grandparents are migrant workers, and they would follow the crop. And one of my aunts or cousins actually was going to college in Purdue, and my grandpa was driving her from Texas to Purdue and saw all the farmland in Indiana and came up.
That's a great story. That's very cool. And have you gone to have you gotten a chance to go, say, to Mexico where your mother grew up, or Texas, or have you lived in Indiana your whole life then?
Yeah, I actually lived in Indianapolis my whole life. I joined the military pretty much right out of high school, but I haven't really been to my mom's house because it's just she grew up kind of poor, so it's not like the vacation destination, if you know what I mean. So,
right.
But I have been to my dad's. My dad is from Mercedes, Texas, which is like in the valley. So I've been there quite a few times.
Okay, and now your favorite sports team is what, Tomas?
The Indianapolis Colts.
I figured it was probably the Colts. All right, Tomas, we're going to do – now, how often do you listen to this program?
I listen to you guys every day.
Do you really? On purpose?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess on purpose. I was wondering if you guys had a maintenance guy in the company. I'm a maintenance technician, and I didn't know if you guys had one.
Are you really? Okay, now what sort of things do you maintain?
So I do HVAC, plumbing, drywall, painting, pretty much everything. I'm kind of a jack of all trades for the building that I work at.
So you took the H out of the name and you put it in the VAC, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, see how easily we do that?
He said, I don't know if you caught that. He said drywall. So whenever the time comes, you never know.
Okay, so that leads to a good trivia question, Tomas. If you get this right, Tomas, I will be so highly impressed if you get this right. Eddie is referencing the fact that about 3 weeks ago, it appeared as though I might have need for a drywall expert in terms of my parents' house. For what reason? Do you happen to know that answer?
I want to say that did the basement flood? I'm not sure.
Nope, they don't. My parents were threatening to move, and it's the house that I grew up in, and I wanted to cut out part of the closet wall that I had as a kid where my buddies and I all used to sign our names and write our girlfriends and everything else. So that was that. But that's pretty rare that somebody would know that. So here we go. We're going to do show trivia, Tomas. You get to pick one of the three of us, and we will ask a question about one of the other two. Which would you like to ask the question? Would you like Jake to ask a question involving Jimmy and Eddie, Eddie to ask one about Jimmy and myself, etc.? Who would you like to ask the question?
We're going to go with Eddie.
Eddie, all right. Go ahead, Eddie.
I always hate being put on the spot. Let's see. Who do you want me to ask the question about?
Well, Eddie, that's up to you. That's the whole beauty of the segment here. This is called free-flowing, ad-lib, non-scripted radio.
Okay. I'll do a question about.
The show's over at 3, by the way.
I know. I'll do a question about Jake then.
Go ahead.
So they always harass me for our 3 teams that we picked in our major league bet for the entire season. Jimmy went with the Cleveland Guardians. I went with the Miami Marlins. Can you recall who Jake picked for this season-long beer bet? Which team?
I know it's not. I know it's not an NL team.
It is an NL team. I'll give you that.
Okay.
Okay, how about this, Tomas? It is a city that I picked it because I like the city because I go there every year at Christmas time for like 2 days.
Oh my gosh.
Our 2 o'clock guest is from this city.
That's right.
I'm drawing a blank. I'm just gonna reach out there and say Florida Marlins.
Well, Eddie took the Marlins, right? And was
Yes.
the moron of the group. All right,
Yeah.
Tomas, I'm going to give you one more here. You ready?
Yes.
I'll give you one more because that was the Milwaukee Brewers. Can you tell that I'm trying to give you the tickets here is what we're doing, right?
Definitely.
Now, Tomas, if you don't get this one right, then not only, there's not going to be any penalty here, but here we go. What Major League Baseball team am I bragging all day because of my brilliance in making a prediction about them that came true last night?
Is it the White Sox?
Yes! Yes, Tomas, there you go. Now, do you have kids, Tomas?
I do. I have a 15 and a 13-year-old.
Okay, now how many tickets are we giving away here, Eddie? We have 2. All right, so you can take the date, you can take the wife. I'm saying that because I don't know if you're married or, whatever it might be, but whoever you'd like to Kevin Hart and may not need a babysitter if they're 15, or you can take one of the kids, whatever it might be. But, Tomas, we're going to hook you up with Kevin Hart November 17th,
Awesome.
Old
You guys
National
are great.
Center. I love the story. I appreciate your service in the military. I appreciate the fact that the story with your grandparents and your parents and everything else, and I'm happy that they made the decision to reside here in Indiana because we're happy to have you as the official HVAC member and maintenance guy of the company.
Yeah.
All right?
Awesome.
All right.
Way to go, Tomas.
Appreciate it,
Awesome.
Tomas.
Thanks,
There
guys.
you go. Tomas will get your information and send you on about your way. Now, you said we have one other pair to give away, Eddie? Should we do it right now?
Yeah. We can, yeah.
Okay, now we're going to do this hopefully more succinctly. Which one would you like to take here?
Let's go with John.
John, what's going on, John?
Hey, how you doing?
I'm all right, John. What are you out doing? You driving around today? You working? What's going on?
Driving, yeah. Coming home from work.
Now, what's working involved, John? What time do you go to work in the morning?
Usually I'm there at 9. What I do is I work at Goodwill. I support employees,
That's
helping
cool.
them if they're
That's cool.
career challenges.
And now, when you say you work at Goodwill, I know they have obviously the various like retail locations. Do you work at a centralized area of that or at one of the stores?
So we have a contract with the federal government. So I hit like Minton, the Social Security office, federal courthouse, places like that.
Okay. And John, are you native to Indianapolis?
I am.
And that would mean when you were in high school, who was the biggest rival? When you were a senior in high school, give me the one high school that you hated more than any other.
The Westfield Shamrocks.
Okay. So that would mean, I'm going to guess here, John, that would mean, now, were you from a school of similar size to Westfield, or was Westfield the bigger brother school for you?
So at the time it was similar size. However, they're much bigger.
So I'm going to say that would mean you were probably, and I'm going to guess here, did you go to a school that has a pretty proud football tradition?
Absolutely.
I'm going to guess that you were a Sheridan Blackhawk.
Yes, sir. You got it.
Okay. Now, and what year did you graduate from Sheridan?
03.
03. Okay. And who was the kid that was the quarterback there that went on to be the O coordinator at IU?
Oh, you're asking me too quickly on that. I'll probably remember once we get off the phone here.
Literally was just the O coordinator. I can't believe I spaced his name. Did you play football, did you say, John?
I did. I was running back.
Oh, really? So you were chasing Brett Law's records?
Chasing there. Fell short.
Yeah, long way to go on that, right?
Right, yeah.
All right, John. So are you a Kevin Hart fan?
I am.
Now, let me ask you this, John. Would you like show trivia or would you like just overall general knowledge trivia?
Go with general knowledge.
General knowledge trivia. All right. Which one would you like to pick? You want Jimmy to do a question? Or you want me to do a question?
Yeah, send it over to Jimmy.
Jimmy, go ahead. Give us a general knowledge trivia question, top of your head.
What was the name of the Indiana native who won gold yesterday?
Oh, come on.
Hocker.
First name? Think about West Virginia. What do they mine for in West Virginia? What do you not want Santa to bring in your stocking? John.
Oh, yeah.
There you go, John. All right, appreciate it. The pride of the Blackhawks, John, and appreciate your work with Goodwill as well, John. We will get you set up, and maybe you can say hi to Tomas when you're at Kevin Hart together. Joel A. Erickson, the aforementioned, going to join us top of the hour. Again, Colts injury news today. Josh Downs, high ankle sprain. Looking at 4 weeks, but why it could be more than that. I'll tell you that next. Before Joel A. Erickson joins us, Josh Downs' high ankle sprain. We will get into how that can actually parlay, in my opinion, beyond 4 weeks. Although, there are a lot of variables that go into that. But if you were just joining us on the program.
Where have you been?
Thank you, Eddie. It was during 7-on-7 drills towards the end of practice, I believe, when Josh Downs was tackled by Nick Cross. Shane Steichen was not pleased about that fact. And he was carried, or helped, I should say, off the field, did not put weight on the leg, and it was determined to be a high ankle sprain, expected to be a 4-week injury. We'll talk about that with Joel A. Erickson coming up here just a couple of minutes. Yesterday, they announced that the Bristol Motor Speedway, right, Eddie?
Yes.
Is
that is
going
correct.
to the Bristol Motor Speedway, which is basically right on the Tennessee-Virginia state line, is going to host a baseball game between the Atlanta Braves and the Redlegs of Cincinnati in the infield of the Speedway. Now, I have always said, and by the way, I hate to be the bearer of bad news for people here, but every year in May, it gets kind of recirculated, the photo that was taken out of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway media guide where it says, how big is it? Yankee Stadium, Churchill Downs, the Vatican, the Rose Bowl, and I think there's like one other one that they put, can all fit in the infield at the same time.
Lucas Oil, maybe?
It's not Lucas Oil. They're all international places. But I looked it up because I'm like, first off, the images that they have on the inside of the Speedway, you can only do that if all of the images are taken via satellite from the exact same height. Because from 2 miles up, the Rose Bowl is going to be a lot smaller image than it is from half a mile up,
Right.
whatever. There's a little fact and fiction in that, and I hate to spoil things here for the Speedway, but it is true that all of those venues fit inside the property of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, which includes the North 40 and the Coke Lot. That doesn't mean that they would fit all inside the oval simultaneously.
Did you say the Roman Coliseum?
The Roman Coliseum, thank you. So it's the Roman Coliseum, is it Rose Bowl
Yeah,
maybe?
Yeah, looks like the Rose Bowl,
Yankee Stadium, Churchill Downs, and the Vatican, right?
They threw. Looks like they threw Wimbledon on here too on this one.
Honestly, I mean, so, but again, if you go with the north inside the oval, no, but within the property of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, yes. But it does beg the question: what event would you like to see inside the oval at the Speedway? Because there have been, the Rolling Stones concert was fabulous. There's obviously golf would be off the table because you do have, a PGA event that you could have on the Brickyard Crossing, which would include part of the infield of the Speedway. I think a Frozen 4 would be cool. Not Frozen 4, Winter Classic, like in the NHL game they do outside.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of the problem with that is the weather here in the wintertime is kind of too unpredictable because theoretically, to put an ice skating rink, and I think you could do that up in turn 4, for example. But if you said, imagine if you were going to do that and it happened to be the weekend that the Super Bowl was here where it was like 62 degrees outside. I mean, you would still be able to have the ice, don't get me wrong.
Sure.
But part of the magic of the Winter Classic is the snowfall, freezing temperatures of people sitting outside to watch ice hockey, right? I mean, that's kind of the magic and the allure of the whole thing. But I think that would be cool if you could do that.
I realize that there is an element of fatigue with this and how the college football playoff might make all of this irrelevant. But if we're playing full-on, fantasy ideas here, the IMS Bowl would be pretty cool. You could have a bowl game set up with the
cool. Now,
Speedway.
Along those same lines, if you were going to put a football field in there, then the game that I think would fit, because I do think that the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, because the Indianapolis 500 is so epicentered around the respect for the military because it's Memorial Day. And for Memorial Day, you obviously are paying homage to those who have given the ultimate sacrifice. Mm-hmm. I think that it would be fitting and, well received to have another event that pays equal respect to the military, but to celebrate and champion those that are currently serving and have and I know this is tough because it probably does realistically belong in Philly or Baltimore. I totally get it.
Yeah.
But the Army-Navy game would be awesome.
Yeah, it'd be incredible. I'm with you. The caveat at the end is that there's a level of, that doesn't belong there. But yeah, I mean, the idea of having that connection between service and the Speedway.
I've wanted so badly my entire life to go to the Army-Navy game. I just have always thought that would be the absolute coolest.
I'm with you.
To go to. By the way, patiently waiting, Ronnie's been waiting on the line. I believe it's Ronnie, right? Just about a minute before we get to Joel A. Erickson. But, Ronnie, I know you said you had a story about the father of Cole Hocker, correct?
Yeah, I do. Hey,
that's a positive story, right?
Well, real quick, I'm a professional card player, and we say two pair. That's
two
what we
pair.
say.
Okay, so the pair is singular, but I'm sorry. So not two pairs, two pair, right?
Right. You got aces and eights. You got two pair.
Okay. All right. Very well. All right. Go ahead, Ronnie.
Okay. All right. So I used to be a teacher. Cole's father is a teacher. We taught together at Mackenzie. It's in Lawrence. It's kind of like the J River Light.
Okay.
Over there. And one Monday morning, we had a teachers meeting. He came up. He was limping a little bit. And, I was like, hey, what's going on? He's like, oh, I'm just and this is, David Wood said something about genetics, right? So, I asked him, hey, yeah, what's going on? He's like, well, I had a big run. He's like, I ran home from Muncie on Saturday, and he lived in Lawrence. Just for fun.
I was going to say, does car break down, Ronnie? Why'd you not go get him, right?
Right?
Ronnie, now, do you still talk to his dad?
No, not really. Yeah, I've left that job, but I remember that, and
well,
it brought back good memories.
If you get a Christmas card for him, just a suggestion, you might want to get him a AAA membership for next year, right? Because it sounds like he might need it, right? Unbelievable! Just having to run home, huh?
It was like he had it planned out.
I know. I mean, I'm being facetious.
I know. But I got one other real quick story. A little bit unrelated, but my girlfriend, fiance, we've been back and forth for a long time. I don't know if anyone else has experienced this, but we're just hanging out. And she's like, "Have you ever been with anyone?" And I'm a huge IndyCar guy.
Okay.
And she's like, "Have you ever been with anyone famous?"
Okay.
And, I'm like,
I have a feeling we're about to pull a J.R. Hildebrand and go crashing into turn 4, but keep going.
And I'm like, no. But really interesting, she's like, do you know who Thomas Schechter is?
No way.
Speaking of hitting the turn 4 wall.
So, So that's my story. And also, I'm the cat guy.
Oh, yeah, you're the one that met my dad looking for your cat, right?
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
Man, what a turn.
Every story somehow comes back to cat with Ronnie. All right, Ronnie, we appreciate it. Call anytime, Ronnie. I love it, man.
What in the world?
That is now Random Ronnie. He is the official director of Random here on the Query and Company program. Absolutely fantastic. Joel A. Erickson next. Is this his signature song at this point?
Yeah.
It's got to be, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Small Town?
I think Jack and Diane still takes the cake.
Yeah, that's probably right. Just based on sports anthems and things, or venues and things like that in general.
It's the
right?
one you're most likely to hear if you left the state of Indiana and went to a random place. You're gonna this is the song.
That is true. That is probably true. Yeah, you're listening to a radio station in Phoenix. That's the one that would be most likely in the mix. Joel A. Erickson is our guest on the Express Pro Tire and Auto guest line. Joel, before we get to the situation with Josh Downs and Nick Cross, and I want to get to that for certain, I've got my own concerns. Now, how long have you been in the wind tunnel there, Joel? Now, Eddie, did you queue up Joel?
I left the building out here, and I got hit with a gust.
Yeah, did you go to the Fish concert the other night where that fellow was trying to play a vacuum cleaner? Because that sounds like that's what you're trying to do.
I don't know what just happened there, but there's some wind out here in Westfield.
Back at the RCA Dome.
That's right. So John had a question that he was waiting on hold, and I'm going to get right to this with you, and it does not have to do with the situation we're going to talk about with Downs. But I think it's a good question, Joel, and that is, and I raised this 2 years ago. If you go out to Colts camp, you see that all the players on their helmets have on the additional external padding that is supposed to exponentially decrease the odds of neurological injury to players, which is good. I'm all for that. But the NFL has always claimed that that is their first and foremost priority when it comes to safety. Yet, if they know definitively that these pads can reduce said injuries, why are they not using them in games?
They can. This year they can. And that's actually on my list of things to sort of make note of this week when they play the Broncos is, that there are some players going to wear them. Because they have made it so that they can wear it this year. And, we've been talking about it for a while. It's kind of a hard thing to
This is one of those things I brought up 2 years ago. Where's I should get credit for this, right? Because once again, I was wait, immediately I thought, in my thought, Joel, I realize I cut you off there, my apologies, but is part of it, are they going to have to wear them in a paint scheme of the helmet?
So I think, I don't know this for sure, but I do think that there are some that have the horseshoe on them. Not that we've seen them out here at camp, but I think I've heard talk about that.
Well, here's the thing. Wouldn't it be, again, this is, and my apologies for my random brain droppings, and, you never know when it's like that windstorm. You never know when that's going to come. So wouldn't it be advantageous, though, unless it is mandated, that to wear that, it has to be in the same paint design as the helmet? Wouldn't it be advantageous for Michael Pittman and Alec Pierce to wear those and have it be a bright blue so that when Anthony Richardson's dropping back, he knows which on his checks, it's that much easier to identify who he's throwing to?
Oh, I hadn't thought about that, but yes, you could have, that would be a way to sort of change it a little bit. That's true. I had not thought of that. I've thought about it mostly in the fact of I think they're best for the linemen because they have all those, blows that happen play to play right there, and that's who used them first when they first started coming out. The Guardian caps was the offensive linemen used them the most. So I was wondering if we're going to see all 5 linemen wear them, or if it's going to be spotty. It is interesting to me. I'm kind of glad you brought this up. It is something that's kind of under the radar. I just didn't know how to ask, players every time they come up, hey, are you going to wear this Guardian cap? Hey, are you going to wear this Guardian cap? When you're sometimes trying to pursue other storylines.
I don't know where it ends up going in terms of league-wide participation, and maybe there is more details about what the color scheme or the setup will be, but from Kevin Seifert's of ESPN's article back in April when the initial announcement was made, to your point, Joel, the NFL will allow Guardian caps on helmets during the regular season. In that article, it references the current plan is for the Guardian caps to have team logos on them when worn during games. It doesn't say anything about, the base color or what that would be. You would think it would probably match the paint scheme of the helmet, but no full clarity in that piece.
The Chargers do have some, and I've seen pictures of them practicing in it, and it's the exact same paint scheme as their helmet.
Yeah, again, that makes sense that you'd want to have uniformity in that regard. Joel, going back to, what we've mentioned a couple times on the show, I know you covered it as well being out there, but the breaking news of Josh Downs Josh Downs getting injured on that collision with Nick Cross, and the diagnosis from Jeremy Fowler and others being that it's a high ankle sprain. Your initial reaction to the moment that it happened in camp, and then the fallout of an injury that oftentimes can regrettably lead to other injuries, as Jake pointed out earlier, due to overcompensation.
Yeah, the initial reaction was just like, this is sort of if you're out at camp a lot, it's sort of a running joke how the coaches always say stay up, stay up, stay up anytime someone goes to the ground. But that was my first thought, because normally when they're saying that, it's like a running play up the middle. Bodies are kind of getting knocked around and there's a lot of traffic. This is different. You don't see a lot of just straight tackles in the open field anymore, especially in 7-on-7. I mean, 7-on-7 is somewhat less of a, I don't want to say less competitive. It's still competitive, but it's less intense from a physical standpoint than 11-on-11 usually. And that you hate to say it, but that was my first thought was you can't take him to the ground there, which Shane Steichen backed that up when he came and talked to us. You've got to be smart. You can't take him to the ground. The way he went to the ground, it's not like it was I think I described it in my story as something like dragged to the ground or something like that. It wasn't a horse collar, but it was his weight around Downs' waist and pulling him down, which I think most fans who watch a lot of football, I think if you're like me, whenever someone gets taken down like that, you're like, oh, are they going to get back up? So just not the kind of and this is also sort of a I guess teaching moment, for everyone who wonders why the league has gone away from live tackling in camp and stuff like that. Because you still see some people going, well, why aren't they, just really hitting and going to the ground and all that stuff? Because stuff like this happens, and they already have enough trouble with players getting hurt. They're trying to get as many of them healthy as the preseason as possible. You'd prefer not to have someone get hurt in this manner.
Joel, for me, the concern is this. Joel A. Erickson, our guest on the Express Pro Tire and Auto Guest Line, he's from the Indianapolis Star. The concern for the Josh Downs injury, and I had mentioned this earlier, is the following. High ankle sprains, to me, I'm not a doctor, but I've played a lot of sports. I've done running, basketball, etc. I don't pretend to be an NFL athlete. But in covering sports as well, high ankle sprains seem to be the gateway injury more than any other, because players want to kind of accelerate back. Part of how you get range of motion in the ankle sometimes is to kind of get back into a movement on it, but you don't realize that you are being compensatory, and that then tweaks other areas, the hamstring, the quad, whatever it may be. Do you agree that that is an element of concern of a high ankle sprain in terms of the rehabilitation or the comeback and the timing of a comeback for it?
Yeah, high ankle sprains tend to be complicated. I mean, obviously that's what started Jonathan Taylor's sort of issue a couple of years ago, was that he had a high ankle sprain and then coming back and hurt it again. And, there's stuff like that. I also think, the next time we get a chance to ask about it, I'm probably going to ask, or someone should probably ask it. I'll try to remember myself if he's going to have a procedure done, because there's also the tightrope surgery, which I can't fully describe to you, but it's a surgery that Alabama sort of became known for using with high ankle sprains a couple of years ago, in an effort to sort of speed up the recovery process versus the rest and rehab way that they'd done it before. So that's another piece of it that's interesting, because I think I'm kind of going off the cuff here, but I think that the plan with the tightrope surgery is that it's not a super long recovery if you get it. So if it is in fact a high ankle sprain, as Jeremy Fowler is reporting, I do think of those as complex injuries. I think everyone does. It's very different than a low ankle sprain. I think we've all also heard that they can be worse than a break. So who knows? We don't know any of that stuff yet. I think Fowler's initial report was more than a month. But yeah, high ankle sprain, well, it's not, it's not as bad as torn ligaments and stuff like that. I have the same impression you do. If I see that, my initial thought is, ooh, this could be complex going forward.
If we are proceeding into reckless speculation waters, right? Because you mentioned it's all very early. Jeremy Fowler, very distinguished reporter in his own right, said it's a high ankle sprain. Okay, high ankle sprain, and let's say it's about a month. I think that Kevin Bowen had tweeted this around that same report time. That's about the time that the season opener would be, is about a month from now. Let's operate underneath the assumption he is not out there for week 1. Is it as simple as, okay, well, your depth chart now, top 3 receivers is Downs, Mitchell, and Pierce. Let's go about your business? Or would that be too much to ask of the rookie and Mitchell to maybe take on a larger role if that is indeed where things end up trending?
Well, my initial reaction, and Shane Steichen sort of acknowledged this later when we talked to him, was I bet it would be kind of a all hands on deck, shifting around, creativity type of thing to replace Downs, because Anthony Gould is his backup, the 5th round pick out of Oregon State. I don't think you can really expect him. He wasn't as polished, kind of in the middle of the field, those short routes that Downs does such a good job on. Gould is not known for that. We haven't seen a ton of that from him in camp so far. What we have seen is that he can really stretch the field from that spot. But you can't really expect him to do that and play that role the same way. So what I would think is, like, you probably move Pittman in there sometimes, and then you could play him with Mitchell and Pierce. I also think that if you wanted to, guys like Kylan Granson, if healthy, Will Mallory. Mallory's battling a hamstring injury right now himself. Those kind of guys are also guys who've done that before, and you could maybe use a tight end instead of a slot receiver and some of that stuff. I do think, though, it's a loss just given, Downs' skill set and what he does for this receiving core is kind of unique. There's not really another player who's like him, at least at this point in their careers, because of the way Gould plays. He's been more of a down the field target in training camp so far than sort of what we think of as the stereotypical slot receiver.
Joel, I don't know, you've done, how many times would you say that you've had conversations with me on the radio here or elsewhere? What are we looking at? 25, 30 times, probably somewhere like that over the years?
Something like that.
Okay.
Yep.
So you know a couple of things about me. One of them is that, my clairvoyance impresses people on the regular, including myself. But the other is that I'm the king of bad analogies, right? You know this, right?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Okay. I'm going to give you a bad one.
Okay.
I often talk about when I call the Indy 500 and I'm up there in turn 3, I've just got a little legal pad and I write down every, 10 or 15 laps, I write down like the top 8 just to like refresh myself so that I can keep an eye on it. At the end of the Indy 500 a couple years ago, the year that Marcus Erickson won the race, which was not somebody that anybody thought going into it was a favorite to win the Indy 500. But I went back and looked at my notebook, and I'm like, you know what? He was the one name that was on the top 8, like on every single page. Like he was consistently right there for the course of the race. Give me a player that if you were to go back and look at your notebook that you didn't go into it thinking was going to be a guy you were writing down or jotting down as you were watching practices here during camp. But you look back at it and you go, you know what? In November, that guy's going to make a play, and it's going to make sense because he actually ended up on every page of my notebook during camp. That guy's who?
That's a great question.
Thanks.
I think it might be. I think it might be one of the veteran tight ends. It might be Tyler Granson or Mo Alley Cox. Like Mo Alley Cox is not. There was that one year that they tried to make Mo Alley Cox into a number 1 tight end, right? And it didn't work. And for all of his basketball skills, he's not really the aerial acrobat that you'd think. But if you remember when he caught the ball last year, they were sort of all big catches. They were always in some, nifty play call that Shane Steichen had schemed up. He's been sure-handed out here. It feels like just the nature of his job, the fact that he's mostly a blocking tight end, sort of the extra tackle type, allows Steichen to kind of spring him on people. So that's one thing I would say about, like, he might show up in November with a couple of touchdown catches. And then with Granson, Granson is not flashy about it. And I think he's had basically the same season 2 years in a row where his catches are like 31 and 30 or 31 and 32 or something like that. But, today he took a screen and it would have gone for it's hard to know on the practice field, but 25, 30 yards. He's had other practices where he's had 3 or 4 catches. I don't think that you're going to get any of those tight ends with, say Dallas Clark level volume. But I do think that there could be a game and a situation where, one of those guys either has a big catch or 2 big catches, or basically I'm writing a story about them after the game because of how much impact they had on it.
Give me a player that had or has a great opportunity before them and to this point has yet to really reach out and snag it.
Well, Nick Cross. Nick Cross so far is probably the player that jumps to mind right away. The free safety job is just wide open coming into camp, and he finished the season as a starter. He's the guy that they invested in a while back. He's got the most athletic ability. And, it's not even me saying this. Gus Bradley said this just the other day. They don't really have a front runner at free safety. I don't know how much today's play affects that one way or the other, but he's got 1 interception. He's been, I don't know. He just hasn't shown up as much in the notebook. That's a good way of putting it. Outside of that interception, I have not written him down very often. And Gus Bradley sort of acknowledged this when he said, we need those guys, somebody to start making more plays, because when we put Julian Blackmon there, he immediately made an interception and another big play. That's the one that jumps out at me, and it's that spot that jumps out to me. The fact that they're trying Julian Blackmon back there is a big deal just because of this reason. The strong safety job in Gus Bradley's defense does the bulk of the talking because of where he lines up. And so for that reason, the 2 years Gus Bradley has been here, it has ended up being a veteran in that spot. It was Rodney McLeod taking over for Cross the first year, and then it was Blackmon last year. And to me, the fact that they're toying with the idea of moving Blackmon out of that role and back to free safety and either counting on Cross or Ronnie Harrison to play the strong safety is an indicator of that backs up just what Bradley was saying. They don't really have a front runner at that position. And honestly, by now it should be Cross's to lose, just based on where he was picked, his athletic ability, all that stuff. Like, he should be kind of taking control of it by now, and it hasn't happened.
Joel Erickson is our guest, covers the Colts for the Indy Star on the Express Pro Tire and Auto guest line. He joins us. Joel, when asked about playing time for the preseason opener, he said, did Shane Steichen, that he would finalize that tomorrow. And then in regards to starters at play, he basically said possibly yes. This is year 2 covering Shane Steichen. We had the opportunity to talk to him on, earlier this week, and it doesn't surprise me at all on Monday. Is this him being intentionally vague? Does this surprise you at all? Is this consistent with what he did last year in terms of the lead up to game number 1 of the preseason?
Yeah, I think it is. I think he pretty much kind of waited until the middle of it. I think there was some of this with Frank Reich too, if I remember right, where they would wait until their plans were finalized midweek and then they would tell us. I thought that possibly that the starters would play was a hint. I don't know. I will say this. I do think that there's probably not as much to be finalized as he's letting on. I just think of him as sort of ultra prepared. And so maybe he's waiting on some medical reports. Maybe someone's practicing dinged up a little bit and they don't want to do it. But I would think that he probably planned out a while back how much he wants guys to play and when he wants guys to play and all that stuff. But yeah, this is kind of par for the course although I will say this. Shane Steichen has taken a step forward as an interview subject, I think, in his training camp. He described Anthony Richardson's throwing motion as sort of like a coiled rattlesnake today. And I was like, some poetry from Shane Steichen. We hadn't gotten that before.
Do you think that can be traced to Jake asking him Family Feud style about the wide receivers?
It's a brilliant question.
It was, admittedly, it was. I didn't know if maybe that was a turning point.
I said, Shane Steichen, who was on The Price is Right when he was in college, and I said, Shane, you like game shows, so you're familiar with Family Feud. Top 3 answers are on the board. Question is, the Colts' most valuable wide receivers are? Now that's a good question, isn't it, Joel?
It's a great question. Fantastic question. Did he
I believe the immediate response is I'm not going to answer that, but then he elaborated a bit.
No, I think he said like That's good because
He did
you're going to
compliment you
try
on
to
it.
get me to go there,
He
but
did.
we have 4 guys.
Yeah.
But later, what I found interesting, though, and this is where, Joel, within the course of an interview where you can read some things, he was kind of coy on the wide receiver answer, but he was totally unfiltered and honest about the wide open nature of the safety answer, which leads you to believe, just to me, that illuminates just how wide open, in fact, the safety position is, because he didn't play the same coyness of, we got a lot of great guys in the room.
Yeah, and I mean, even we got Assistant General Manager Ed Dodds today, and even Ed was talking about, we've got a lot of different combinations there, and how they might move Julian up and might move Julian back. That's as unsettled a position as I think I can remember seeing at this heading into the first preseason game, where not only do we think that it's unsettled, but the coaches and people around the team are also just flat out telling us, yeah, we're looking for solutions right now. We don't have them yet.
Hey, Joel, when it comes to Anthony Richardson, throughout camp, which has happened more often? He has made plays that have justified all of the promise and potential that is believed in him, or he has simply avoided plays that would erase that optimism?
I would say it's the former. But there have not been, I will say this, there have not been a lot of mistakes in terms of I can't believe he threw it in that direction. Why would you make that throw ever type of thing?
To me, his bigger issue has not been necessarily about why would you make that throw, but rather why would you make that throw to that location?
Yeah.
And has that been, and I don't know, has that been the case this year, or has that improved from a year ago?
No, that's improved. I think he's been fairly accurate for the most part. There has been a couple practices where he had some overthrow issues, but for the most part, I think he's been fairly accurate. It's the movement at this point more than it is the throwing in camp. The way he moved, like, we're not getting. We kind of keep telling ourselves, Kevin Bowen obviously and I kind of check in with each other sometimes when we're watching practice, and both of us, when we're talking about the offense having a bad day or a good day, we're like, yeah, but we don't actually know what Richardson would do in this situation. Like, there was a good example. I think it was partially because they put a clock on it. But on Monday, they were at the 2-yard line, and I think it was supposed to be there's 10 seconds left or 15 seconds left, and we can't run the ball. So he threw the ball twice from the 2-yard line. And I immediately thought to myself, there's a very specific situation in the game where he would throw the ball twice from the 2-yard line. And then on 4th down, when they didn't get those 2 passes, he ran it and would have scored easily. So there's a piece of it where you're wondering, because of the practice setting, because of not trying to get people hurt, because of not wanting to get him hurt, I feel like there's a whole portion of the offense that we're just not seeing right now. And I think it's going to be a pretty important portion of the offense, considering if you just think back to the touchdown runs he had last year and some of the other stuff he did with his legs.
Joel, are we past the point, going back to the safety conversation for just a second, are we past the point where they would consider moving Julian Blackmon to free safety again full time?
No, I think that's absolutely possible. I think it's absolutely possible that Blackmon goes back to free safety full time.
Would it be more likely for those competing for a spot alongside him to end up as strong safety or free safety at this stage?
Because of the okay, if Nick Cross ends up as a starter, I think he probably ends up as a starter at free safety because of the communication.
Okay.
If Nick Cross doesn't end up as a starter, the most likely thing to me seems right now that it's Julian Blackmon at free safety and Ronnie Harrison at strong.
Or what about the fact that somebody is starting for the Colts in week 1 in the defensive backfield that is not currently on the roster?
Maybe, although those options have dwindled this week. Quandre Diggs is a Titan now. Adrian Amos signed somewhere yesterday.
Jacksonville.
and Justin Simmons is currently visiting the Saints. So whereas there were a lot of options there before, those options are dwindling. So right now, my initial thought is that we're likely to see some combination of what's here. Just kind of going off of, like Ed Dodds today was saying, they need to see some of the games to get a better read on the safety situation. It feels like with Simmons in New Orleans that if you're really waiting for the games, he might be somewhere by then. And that would make me think that they're probably going to end up going with one of the guys with whatever combination of guys they have right now.
Joel A. Erickson on the Express Pro Tire and Auto Guest Line Indianapolis Star, where you can read his coverage, and that will include what is now going to be a story we will keep an eye on probably for the rest of camp as they wrap things up in Westfield and taking it all the way back to West 56, the story of Josh Downs, the high ankle sprain, the incident with Nick Cross today. What does that mean for actually both players moving forward? I don't think it's going to mean a lot for Nick Cross, but it was kind of a boneheaded play. But nonetheless, we shall see. Joel, appreciate the time as always. We'll talk soon, all right?
Yeah, you bet. Sounds good.
Joel A. Erickson on the Express Pro Tire and Auto Guest Line. I still do believe, I can't rule out the possibility that you just don't know who's going to be released from a safety standpoint, things like that from other franchises, you know what I mean, that might be available.
Maybe it's the pessimist in me, because you're right, Jake. You never know what type of nuggets you're going to be able to find as cut-down days happen, but I will give Chris Ballard credit. He usually likes to act swiftly when he's in a decisive mode, and I feel like if that's the path they wanted to go on, they would have done it already, barring an injury to their own core, right? If something happens to, knock on wood, Blackman or Cross between now and then maybe then you end up pulling the emergency release valve. But I feel like it would have happened by now.
There is another gold medalist from Central Indiana. Just happened since we've been on the air. Jeff Rickard, our colleague, will be happy about it because it's a sport under which he has great interest. And there's a very cool story that started with a workout regimen in Times Square and ended in Paris. And I'll tell you what I mean by that next. Now, how about this story? A couple of cool stories in the Olympics in terms of cycling. This first one, and this comes from the Book of Faces, so you know it's got to be reliable. Kristen Faulkner grew up in Alaska. Jimmy, you been to Alaska?
I have not.
Eddie, you been to Alaska?
No, sir.
Alaska, the one place I've been where you're there and you're like, I can't believe I'm in the U.S. And you can smell the cleanliness and the purity in the air. New Hampshire, the only other place where I've discovered that. But she grew up in Alaska and was on the crew team at Harvard. That would be the row team at Harvard. Graduates from Harvard, moves to New York City. Obviously, Jimmy, you've been in New York City, right?
Indeed, I have, yes.
Eddie, been in New York City?
Nope.
If you're in New York City and you go to Central Park, you like almost forget that you're in New York City. Kind of like when you're in Alaska, you forget you're in the United States. So she works for a venture capital firm and is like, you know what? Central Park, they've got a beginner's cycling class. Be a good way to get in shape, do something, enjoy the city, and feel like I'm not living in the hustle and bustle of the city. Gets up at 5 o'clock in the morning before work to start cycling around Central Park as part of the classes there. Thinks, I'm pretty good at this. They've got a couple of tournaments. Starts entering a local cycling tournament as part of her exercise and fun program on the bike. Realizes she's pretty good and goes, you know what? I think I'm done with this. Quits her job, moves to California to begin cycling full-time. Gets added to the USA road cycling roster 1 month before the Olympic Games in Paris. And 7 years after taking a beginner's cycling class in New York City, she is now a gold medalist, winning gold in the women's road race, the first gold for that in that event for the Americans in 40 years. I mean, that's pretty cool, right?
That's awesome.
Very, very cool. Now, and again, if you are hoping to watch this tonight and you are from the area and you don't want to know, I certainly understand that. We're about to talk about something that I would assume has already aired on NBC, but with the time delay, may air tonight. Chloe Dygert from right here in Brownsburg, gold medal. Second medal of the Olympics and wins a gold. Let me get the specific event here. But she, of course, had a terrible injury a couple of years ago in an accident, fought back from that. Wins in team pursuit, her second medal in Paris, but she was on the 4-woman team that wins the gold medal in Paris.
That's awesome. Congratulations.
Cool. Very, very cool. And you know, those stories, again, I know that I emphasize this a lot, but the story, for example, the first one that I was telling there of, you know, somebody that just kind of falls into, in Kristen Faulkner's case, falls into is the wrong word, but you get what I'm saying, like didn't grow up. Those are the stories I think that make the Olympics. That's actually the fun part about it, right? Or the guy in Turkey that's the target shooter that just like, you know, literally looks like he's filming in Pulp Fiction. You know what I mean? Like that. Those are the stories that captivate people. Cole Hocker is unbelievable what he did. That actually also, I think, captivates people because he was such an underdog to win that event and made that push at the end. That also grabs people, right? But good stuff all the way around.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it. It's the reason the Olympics are so special for both the diehard fans of sport and the casual fans, because you have all these local angles. And not every state, of course, in the country is fortunate enough to get that opportunity to see a fellow resident of your state wind up winning gold for the United States. But yeah, to have it in back-to-back days now, really, really special.
Now, two other things I want to go back over that we did at the beginning of the show. One of them, Eddie, do you happen to have the audio that you played at the beginning of the show that I'm so proud of? Because it would have been right about 24 hours ago when this first conversation began. Do you happen to have that, Eddie?
Let me see.
This is how Eddie opened up the show this morning. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. I've never been more sure of anything in my life than I am sure about the fact Now, I checked with this, and this was not easy to do. I checked with the Elias Sports Bureau, and I also went to the Associated Press.
Nice.
I did. And I also checked with Guinness.
You're so well connected.
I am. It took a few phone calls,
Yeah.
but I was able to get a
Called
hold of
it a
all
few
three of
favors,
them.
did you?
And all three of them did verify that beating the Oakland A's does still count as ending your 21-game losing streak in Major League Baseball.
There was a big internal debate amongst all those bureaus, I'm sure, about that.
Do we know what
fact.
the attendance was last night for that game? Did they increase? They were at 4,100 2 days ago.
Was that pumped in cheers at the end there? Do we know? Can we confirm or deny if those cheers were pumped in?
Honestly, right? They actually had audio from the Little League World Series that I watched last night between Idaho and Oregon and used that audio for that.
5,800.
5,800. See, 1,700 people heard this program and said, you know what, let's go, because a guy in Indianapolis guaranteed it was going to happen, and it did. Streak ends at 21. Another question for you guys, and then one other thing I want to get to from the beginning of the show. Last night, I'm watching, and I'll admit I fall victim to this as much as anybody else because I kind of roll my eyes at it, but I end up watching it because it's good. You know, there's nothing else on TV. You're flipping through, especially in that window. The Olympics is, if you're not totally into what they're showing at the time. Legitimate question here.
Okay. And then I have another White Sox nugget as well.
The Little League World Series, it seems like they're beginning to show earlier and earlier rounds of this. It used to be that once they were at Williamsport is when you started seeing. I mean, in the early days, it was literally just the finals where it would be, you know, Kirkland, Washington, or whatever it was against Taiwan, and that was it. It was on like ABC Wide World of Sports. Then you started seeing like the semifinals leading up to that, you know, Far East and you know, South and whatever else. Now you're getting into seeing the regionals at their beginning. So you're seeing the regionals and then into the major regionals. It's like the College World Series. That's all well and good, fine, whatever. I do get a kick out of watching. You can see how much professional athletes have an influence on young players when you see these kids that, you know, I mean, I don't have to, you get it. And I was the same way when I played. I mean, I get it. But here's my question. With schools going back earlier and earlier, if these Little League teams are just now getting into regionals, this is probably like, what, a 3-week event?
Yeah.
So are these like 10, 11, and 12-year-old kids missing school?
Well, nowadays they have the e-learning, so it makes it a little bit easier for students to not be in the classroom but still being able to stay on track.
I understand, but here's my only thing, and I'm going to simply lay this there and walk away, right? I'm not, but you can take this for whatever it's worth. It's all well and good, right? I get it. I'm not saying I'm for or against it, whatever else. But I'm also smart enough to know that if that was a 10, 11, and 12-year-old AAU basketball tournament that was taking place and kids from different areas of the United States were playing basketball in that, there would be much more of an uproar about the fact they're not in school than when it is like a lot of times suburbanite Little League baseball teams. That's all. That's all I'm gonna say.
I don't doubt that aspect of it, but I also think that the conversation should change. Maybe I'm being ignorant here. If it's an event that is as synonymous as the Little League World Series, like if it was like the AAU World Series and it had as much prestige around it for a basketball tournament, I think it'd be viewed differently. But
yeah,
perhaps I'm being ignorant there.
I'll respectfully disagree with that. Yeah. I'm not saying that you take away from the Little League World Series. I'm just simply saying if it were, there are demographics in there that are viewed through a different lens.
Sure.
That's the easiest way I'm saying it.
The other White Sox nugget, by the way, last night or yesterday rather, we talked about ticket prices, and Jake had correctly guessed what the prices were for the game yesterday, and I had highlighted that today's get in the door price, they play here in about 40 minutes or so, was $23. Thanks to the streak snapping, ticket prices have plummeted. $6 is your get in the door price.
People wanted to see history, man.
I had a friend
they
tell
want to
me
see history come to an end.
I had a friend tell me they were going to go to Chicago to watch White Sox Cubs if they lost last night and today.
Is that where they go next?
Mm-hmm. They play Chicago, and then they play some team in New York.
So you think people are losing?
Nice.
Here's the thing, though. There is, admittedly, like I was kind of enjoying checking the White Sox scores to see like how long can this go, right?
Hey, it's a new day today. New opportunity for a new streak.
Okay, one other thing. I had made mention of this earlier. The Colts preseason game. Now, this is not applicable for this weekend's game just because I don't know that there's enough time to put it together. But I've done this for a couple of years. We've done this in an effort to put things together where I have partnered with an organization as part of that is aligned with the United Way that works with disadvantaged kids throughout Indianapolis public schools. In addition to that, I have contacted administrators at 2 different elementary schools, one on the north side of Indianapolis, one on the east side of Indianapolis, for kids that are also, again, disadvantaged kids. And when I say disadvantaged, I simply mean kids that are working hard in school, and I know school is just now getting back in, but that would normally not have the opportunity to go to a Colts game. And if you are a Colts season ticket holder and you had to purchase as part of your season ticket plan the preseason games, I know a lot of people either can't or just don't want to go to those preseason games, but you have the tickets. If you are willing, and I appreciate people that do this very much, if you are willing to donate them, then I have partnered with an organization that is part of the United Way, and like I said, 2 elementary schools with very trusted adults that oversee these kinds of programs, where if you send them to me, I will forward the tickets to those organizations. They then put together the opportunity for students at the school with a trusted chaperone from the school or a trusted parent or adult that chaperones them to take them to the Colts game against Arizona. This is for Colts preseason game number 2. And those kids get an opportunity to go down, see downtown Indianapolis, watch a Colts game, experience Lucas Oil Stadium, see the NFL, and they might not otherwise have that opportunity. So if you have tickets that you feel you're not going to use for preseason game number 2, you can simply email them to me. If you don't know my email address or don't have time to write this down because it's a little bit convoluted, admittedly, it is jake.query@radio-1.com. Now, that's a little convoluted. You can text me. Most people, I think, by now probably have my cell phone number, which is 523-9288. That's 317-523-9288. Or you can also email me at the easiest email address to remember, jakequery@me.com. That's my 2 favorite people, Jake Query and me. jakequery@me.com. Very much appreciated. If you need a receipt for it, send a separate email. Let me know that. We can get you that receipt as well. Jimmy's plays of the day are next.
Today's Plays of the Day brought to you by the fine folks over at Greenfield Signs. Greenfield Signs, a professional, comprehensive sign company. 2 locations in central Indiana. They'll take your signage ideas, take hold of that project from design all the way to delivery. Family-owned and managed business for more than 4 generations. For more, go to greenfieldsigns.com. Signage for us today, it's a mix of the Olympics as well as baseball. We'll start first with the men's 400-meter race in track and field. 2 bets for you there. We'll take Quincy Hall of the United States to win outright gold, that at plus 110 odds. In that same race, we'll take Michael Norman, also of the United States, to make the podium. I'm thinking a Hall gold and a Norman bronze finish there for the men's 400 meters. In Olympic basketball on the women's side, we'll lay 26.5 on Team USA as they take on Nigeria, that tipping off at 3:30. Over to the Diamonds back stateside, we'll take the Kansas City Royals to win the money line over the Boston Red Sox. We'll also take cute fella
root for me
of the Baltimore Orioles to win outright over the Toronto Blue Jays. Last one for you. It's a doubleheader today, so we're betting the first game. First pitch about 4:05. We'll lay 1.5 on the run line for the New York Yankees as they begin a set against the Los Angeles Angels. Eddie, any plays for you?
No plays, but I have 2 things I want to mention here real quick.
Alrighty.
First is the sport that I would put inside the Indianapolis Motor Speedway would be a basketball court and have literal racers and pacers going on.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, that'd be cool, right?
And then the second thing is...
Wait, but to clarify, so Indiana Pacers versus actual drivers?
You realize how little a basketball court would look in there, though? That's the only problem.
Yeah, I know.
But that's the matchup, right?
Yeah.
Actual Pacers versus actual drivers?
No,
like
no.
Okay. Cars going around the track.
Okay. I thought we were setting up an exhibition of Pacers versus racers. I was like, oh, man, it's going to be a blowout.
No, the other problem, too, I guess, would be with lighting because there's no lights there, really. I guess that'd be the other problem, right? If it's at night, you'd have to play it during the day, the basketball game, that is.
You can play during the day, yeah.
Yeah. The other thing is, and I'm glad Hoosier pointed this out, when you were bringing up the Little League World Series, Jake, 7 p.m. tonight, if you're bored and you're flipping through your channels,
baby.
You can watch Jasper.
The Engines.
Nice.
They are taking on Illinois, yeah. Winner will go to Williamsport next week.
Little border war.
JMV, I think, is wearing a Michigan shirt in honor of Jim Harbaugh. Is that big for Jim Harbaugh's 4-year show cause?
Probably my, yeah, exactly. My friend Dusty May, so high school friend.
Nice. Okay.
So I like him. I hate the state, though. What a armpit.
You
It's
know,
like Northwest Indiana.
The thing about Michigan, to me, that drives me bonkers, if I was the governor of Michigan, why don't they mow their medians? It looks like so janky in southern Michigan. All of the medians, like the grass is just growing over everywhere, but like in Detroit, breaking through. And I'm like, what are we doing here? Just
they
mow
do
it.
have legalized weed. We're not smart enough to do that yet.
I think every state around us does now, right? Doesn't
no,
Ohio
everybody
now?
does. Yeah, by the time we get involved with it, then it's going to be moved further down the road. So we're really bright.
Legalized recreational shops, right?
Yeah,
I think that's right.
So.
Yeah.
I think Illinois does it a different way.
Eddie,
than
is that
Michigan, right?
That's totally right.
Okay.
Yeah, everybody around here thinks it's just going to be like a rolling Cheech and Chong, I think we're a park, man, kind of thing. So no, probably not what it's going to be like. But
what's the big show looking like for you, John?
Tucker Barnhart,
nice.
Friend of ours.
Got a new gig, right?
Yeah. We'll see. He called me the other night and said, hey, I think I'm going to re-sign with the Reds. And I go, good. And he's going to get that minor league deal, fire that up. We'll talk about Josh Downs, I'm sure. I'm going to get Ned Rip on the show from the start today because we're getting closer and closer to the start of the high school football season. And I want everybody to get on the same page with this because we had a lot of upward movement, I think, this year with the IHSAA classifications for those that have performed well. So we'll talk about that. And
Friday night high school football is fun, man.
It is fun.
The best.
And it's just about here.
It's the thing I missed the most about doing local TV was going to the 2 games on Friday nights, and especially when the weather started getting cold.
2 weeks from Friday.
Awesome.
2 weeks from Friday.
Yep.
That is incredible right there.
That is.
So, yeah, we'll get
even more incredible is that means kids have been in school for 3 months before the first football game, right?
My volleyball team lost today. Excuse me, guys. Sorry.
The Spanish beach volleyball girls?
The men. I was watching
men's
the men.
volleyball got beat by Poland, right?
And they were up They were up, had a chance to close it, let them hang around, and lost to Poland.
Volleyball's fun to watch. For sure, it's fun to watch.
I can't even keep track of the ball.
Yeah,
I have no idea how these guys do it.
Correct. The hand-eye coordination on it's unbelievable.
I'm about right half the time on who just scored.
Reaction time is something for sure. All right, John's up next. He will carry you home. We'll be back with you at noon tomorrow from the Indiana State Fair. We'll be at the Dairy Bar tomorrow. That means milkshakes, grilled cheese, and a whole smorgasbord of fun. And if you are going to be out at the State Fair tomorrow, we would love for you to come by and say hi. We'll be right in front of the Dairy Bar.
Can Jimmy sing Milkshake by, what's her name, Tellis or whatever? My milkshake brings all the chicks to the yard.
That's right.
Can't do that one.
My milkshake brought only one chick to the yard.
We're playing it all day tomorrow. Are you kidding me? All right, that's tomorrow starting at noon. Thanks for listening to Query & Company.